It all begins when this woman appears at the Tungtun shelter, soaked through with a small child at her side, basically begging for a place to stay. The owner takes one look at them and says, "Sorry, we're full." But Helen has been here long enough to know exactly what this miser really means by that. So she pulls out a single silver coin and slides it toward him, and I swear this man's personality completely changed in that instant. Suddenly, there's plenty of room. He shows them their room. He says he'll explain the rules and fees tomorrow, and then he leaves. As soon as they're alone, Helen turns to look at the boy, and just by the way she looks at him, you can tell this woman is carrying something absolutely devastating. The boy looks at her with those big, innocent eyes and asks where his mom and dad are, and Helen knows. She knows exactly what happened to them, and it's so serious that she physically cannot bring herself to say the words. So she does what any exhausted, heartbroken adult would do when a child asks something they are nowhere near ready to answer. She lies, tells him he'll see them soon, that everything is fine, and that he just needs to go to sleep. The boy believes every word, and he falls fast asleep within minutes, and then Helen starts coughing. It's not just a little tickle in the throat. We're talking about blood. This woman has been running on fumes this entire journey, held together by sheer willpower. And now that the boy is safe and asleep, her body finally gives out. She looks at him one last time, whispers her goodbye, and that's it. She's gone, dead in that room before dawn. Rowan wakes up in the night and notices something is wrong. The sheets are bloody, and Helen isn't moving. The shelter owner shows up with his lover after hearing the commotion, and instead of having literally any normal human reaction to a woman dying in his building, these two are mostly just annoyed by the inconvenience. But then the lover gets a certain look on her face. She stares at Rowan, specifically at his light hair, and says, "Doesn't he look a lot like Pauline?" And right at that moment, Pauline walks in. Same hair, same features. These two people could genuinely pass for mother and son without anyone questioning it for a second. So this shrewd woman hatches a plan on the spot and tells Pauline, "Congratulations, now he's your responsibility." And folks, there's something you need to know about this shelter. In theory, it's an exemplary charity with warm beds for the homeless, funded by donations and government money. Very noble, very touching. In reality, it's a money-squeezing machine that preys on desperate people, especially children, under the guise of responsibility fees. So Pauline and Rowan, this newly formed fake mother-son duo, are sent out to beg on the streets every day just to afford the privilege of sleeping there. Pauline introduces herself and asks the boy his name. He doesn't say anything. He's still mentally in that room. He keeps seeing those bloody sheets, still trying to process the fact that another person in his life has just disappeared. Pauline takes one look at his face and understands immediately, so she sits down next to him and just starts talking. She tells him she doesn't know everything he's been through, but the past is behind him now. What matters is what comes next. Stay positive, keep moving forward, and happiness will come to him sooner or later. Then she holds out her hand to him. Rowan takes it without hesitation. He plays the role of her son. They work together on the streets, and what started as pure survival gradually turned into something completely real. Pauline kept the bullies away, stood between him and all the ugliness the streets could offer, and made sure that even on the worst days, he never felt truly alone. 5 years fly by just like that. Rowan is now 8 years old, and the two of them are sitting together one afternoon, reflecting on everything, the long days, the effort, and how far they had really come. But Rowan had heard a rumor that morning that had weighed on his chest all day. He asks her, still smiling, trying to hide it. She nods and tells him that a noble house offered her a real maid position, with a real salary, a real roof, and a real future. Rowan tells her he's happy for her, that it's going to be amazing, and he means it with all his heart. But even as he says it, his eyes are already betraying him, and before he can do anything about it, the tears just start falling because first there were his parents, then Helen, and now Pauline. Everyone he has ever loved is gone, and even though this time it's for something really good, his heart doesn't quite know how to distinguish between being left and simply being left behind. Pauline sees all of that reflected in his face and hugs him tightly. Then she tells him something he will carry with him for the rest of his life. Being alone doesn't depend on who is physically by your side. You are only truly alone if your heart feels empty. But as long as you hold on to the people you love, keep their memory alive, and feel how much they loved you, they never really leave. So whenever loneliness starts to creep in, she tells him, "Just close your eyes, put your hand over your heart and listen, she'll be right there." Cut to a few hours later, Pauline is gone, and now our boy is alone, standing deep in the forest at night, going over her words in his mind. So he does exactly what she told him. Eyes closed, hand over his heart, just listening, and then something incredible happens. Mana begins to swirl around him out of nowhere. His eyes are still closed, but suddenly he can see not just the trees and the darkness, but everything as if the whole world had suddenly become transparent. And somewhere within that vision he feels them, his parents, Helen, Pauline, every person he ever loved, shining brightly and close, as if they had been living inside him all along, just waiting for him to finally look at them. So the years pass after Pauline leaves, and Rowan hasn't received a single word from her. He tells himself she's probably just overwhelmed, adjusting to life in a noble house, new job, new rules, everything new. He prays that she is okay and leaves it at that. What else is he supposed to do? Meanwhile, he goes back to what he knows, begging now alone like any other kid in Tungtun. But Rowan, he's good at this, uncomfortably good. The director realized pretty quickly that this kid brings in more coins than literally anyone else in the operation. So he gets promoted to Zone 1, the best spot. The best foot traffic and the shelter's version of a corner office. Better spot, better treatment, and that's where he meets Blake. Blake runs Zone 1, and as soon as he heard about Rowan's past, the dead parents, Helen, all of it, he took the kid under his wing. Warm, always there at the right time, and as far as Rowan can tell, with no hidden agenda. Blake is also the guy who finally gave a name to what Rowan had been seeing since that night in the forest. Those swirls of light didn't mean he was losing his mind. They were mana. Well, I'm sure you already know what mana is, so I'll skip the boring details. The scene changes, and our boy, sitting in his usual spot with the bucket in front of him, is doing his thing. Some passers-by toss coins into it, and he thanks them with genuine warmth. It's not that fake, theatrical gratitude of beggars, but real gratitude, the kind that genuinely makes people feel good about themselves. A group of women walks by, and they immediately can't stand how adorable this kid is. Coins literally rain into that bucket, but Rowan is only half present. The other half of his brain is running silent experiments. He's been working on something, trying to see both the physical world and the flow of mana at the same time, like keeping two completely different lenses focused simultaneously. The kind of stuff that gives you a headache just thinking about it. But today, something clicks. He pulls it off. Both layers appear perfectly clear at the same time. He allows himself exactly one small smile for it because it really was hard. The downside hits immediately. Keeping both perspectives at once leaves him dizzy and drained, step by step. Blake walks by, sees the bucket absolutely overflowing, and raises an eyebrow. Rowan deflects with a humble beggar routine. It's really the generosity of others, not mine. Blake doesn't quite buy it, but he appreciates the attitude. Before leaving, he leaves a warning. Success breeds envy, so if anything feels strange, anything at all, Rowan should come to him immediately. A final wave goodbye, and he's gone. But here's the thing. There has already been something that felt strange, and Rowan didn't say a single word about it. Yesterday, he saw two men in the crowd. Their appearance was ordinary, but their mana was bright and pure, as dense as Blake's, or even more so. They watched him and then disappeared, leaping cleanly over the buildings. They vanished in the blink of an eye. Rowan reflects on this. They didn't exactly seem like a threat, but they definitely weren't a coincidence. He decides to keep both the sighting and his mana vision ability to himself for now. Information is basically the only advantage an 8-year-old homeless kid has. He's not giving it away for free. His bucket is full, so he packs up and heads back to base camp for replacement. A routine walk. Nothing should happen, except that halfway down the street he sees them again. There aren't just two this time. There are several of them scattered, positioned in the shadows, and this time they don't hang back. They move with him, closing the distance, one behind him, another flanking his side, coordinated enough to make it perfectly clear. This isn't a coincidence. Rowan is 8 years old, he is completely alone, and he's being followed by several mana users, highly skilled ones by city street standards. His pulse races to the max. His thoughts start to fragment. All he has to do is get to base camp. Just get there, the entrance is close, he just has to make it. And then he hears a familiar voice. Blake comes flying in. This man moves at speeds that shouldn't be legal, charging forward as if physics were just a suggestion to him. He scoops up Rowan without missing a step, leaps off the ground, and suddenly they're on a rooftop, then the next one, and the next one. The men below keep pace because of course they do, so Blake shifts up another gear, and he shouts at Rowan over the wind to hold on tight, and most importantly, not to drop a single coin because they need to eat tonight. Rowan doesn't respond. Blake looks down, expecting to see a completely terrified child. Instead, Rowan's gaze is totally lost, as if he were looking into the distance. Blake thinks he's gone catatonic with fear. He brings them back to the shelter, sets him down and talks to him to calm him down. You're safe. It's okay. Go inside. Rowan goes inside. Blake watches, a bit confused, but Rowan wasn't paralyzed by fear at all. His brain had just exploded. The entire chase was thrown into the air. Seeing Blake move at full power had given him something absolutely invaluable. For the first time, he could see exactly how mana flows through the human body during movement. Not in theory, but visually. He saw it happen in real time, how condensed mana concentrates in the legs before a jump, how it floods the arms when strength is needed, and exactly how many precise impulses are actually required to jump from one rooftop to another. He counted them, cataloged every single one. So now, alone and safe inside, he decides to test if he really understood what he saw. He inhales, draws mana from the air, starts circulating it through his body, feeling where it flows naturally and where it meets resistance. Then he starts condensing it, concentrating it, preparing it. And folks, this kid wasn't supposed to try any of this yet. But that's how you know he's the real deal. So now that our boy has mastered the basics, it's only logical that he's eager to test it. Before he acts, the other beggar kids return to the shelter. Rowan's superior orders them to calm down, saying it was just a routine inspection. Go to your rooms and keep quiet. But there's an exception. Rowan, he is specifically told to pack his things because they are going to relocate him. So the quiet boy follows his superior through the shelter, walking a few steps behind as he always does, when suddenly his superior stops to have a private conversation with a big guy. Rowan is too far away to hear anything, but then an idea strikes him, and he pushes his mana toward his ears, so he tries it, and boom, it actually works. Crystal clear audio from across the room, like he'd put in some AirPods. Turns out they're talking about him. Apparently they're moving him out of the dorms and taking him to the main building. Even his own superior doesn't know why, but his best guess is that the director just likes the kid. And honestly, who could blame him? The kid is good-looking for a shelter kid. After what happened in Zone 1 with those guys following him, it's better for him to be in a safe place. They think those men are from the Union. We don't know what that is, but it sounds important. Rowan connects the dots immediately. Those were the guys following him earlier today. Then the man calls Rowan, and they go in until they see Amy at the reception. He mentions that he's illiterate. Amy isn't even surprised. She just says, wow, you're actually really good-looking for a dorm kid. Man, this is unfair. This little kid is charming the pretty girls everywhere. Rowan, completely indifferent, just asks, why do I even need to learn to read? Amy is a bit annoyed that he doesn't already know why he's there. But she explains, readings are fancy gatherings organized by authors or nobles where a child reads aloud in front of important people. It's a very big deal in high society circles. And this time, Rowan is going to present at one of the shelter's big sponsor events. If he does well, he might even get chosen for a private reading. And private readings are basically the fast track to being adopted. That's how sponsors choose their favorites. But for a kid who literally can't read at all right now, no pressure. Rowan stands still and the kid doesn't react. Amy doesn't know what to think, but she pats his head and asks him to follow her. She shows him his new room and introduces him to the other kids. And when she leaves, Rowan starts unpacking into his own personal closet, something he has never had in his life. Right then, one of the boys approaches him, looking at him like he just saw a unicorn. Genuinely surprised that this guy came from the dorms, but also fascinated. He introduces himself as Theo and proceeds to introduce the others. The blonde girl is Noah, the middle kid is Hayden, and the quiet girl on the side is Lily. Theo gives him the welcome speech. No bullying here and no more begging on the streets. The kids in this room manage the library and help visitors. With Rowan in the group, they're happy to have him. That night, Rowan is in bed and can't stop thinking. He keeps thinking about books, about how everything anyone could ever want to know is probably in some book. He thinks about Pauline, who always said books were the best thing you could give a curious kid. Just thinking about her fills him with a quiet, deep gratitude. Rowan has been working hard on his reading practice, and Amy tells him to bring everything he read that day. He leaves a huge pile of books on the table, and she starts jotting down all the titles. Then she stops and looks up. Every book on this list is a fairy tale. She tells him to move to Zone 2, the adult section, and gives him a genuine compliment on how fast he's learning. Rowan is excited. He practically speed walks over there. He starts looking at the shelves, and honestly, all the books look interesting to him. He wants to read them all right away. But then a title stops him dead in his tracks. The Birth of the Kingdom of Grafton in the Union. The Union. He's heard that word before from the adults in hushed tones. He opens it, and the first thing he sees is a complete map of the continent. Apparently a region called Grafton won a huge war a long time ago, and after that the whole world was restructured. 1 kingdom, 6 autonomous regions. Then to make sure no one went to war again, the king created an organization called the Union. It's been running for over 200 years. Peacekeepers. The good guys, supposedly. So now Rowan is confused. If the Union are the good guys, why did Blake run from them like his life depended on it? His first theory. Maybe the Union cracks down on begging and Blake was afraid of getting into trouble. But that doesn't make sense either because Blake had a totally normal relationship with the local supervisors. That theory is out. Then a darker thought comes to him. What if the shelter and the union don't get along? And he's also curious why the shelter is keeping the events of that day a secret. So a few days pass, and Rowan has actually adapted quite well to his new routine. His whole routine basically consists of getting to the library, doing light cleaning, and secretly using mana to make all the physical work a little easier for him. Now, here's the thing. When he lived on the street, using mana required him to stay completely still, like meditating for his life. But now the guy circulates mana casually while walking and reading at the same time. That's a huge improvement. The only problem is that his mana still scatters instead of gathering like it's supposed to. Which is annoying, but Rowan isn't the type to lose sleep over it. One step at a time. Then one day, they gather all the kids in the main hallway. The vice director and Amy are at the front. And without any preamble, the vice director starts reading out the names for the next reading event. Dude, Lily, and Noah are in. Great. But when she gets to Rowan's name, she actually pauses. Because let's be honest, this kid just finished the fairy tale section, so putting him in front of important guests seems a bit of a stretch. But then she really looked at him and thought, well, yes, this kid is really too handsome to leave in the background. Just his face would make the event look better. So instead of making him read, she told him that this time he would just be observing. Soak in the atmosphere, learn the vibe. The kids who didn't even make the cut were looking at him sideways, murmuring that it wasn't fair that the new kid who barely finished the fairy tales got a spot just because of his face. On the day of the event, Rowan arrived in his fancy clothes, and the whole room did a double take. Theo immediately complimented him. Rowan returned the compliment, and then Amy escorted him to his assigned seat. Once everyone was settled, there was a knock at the door, and the VIP guests started entering, until one of those guests stopped dead in her tracks. She recognized him. This woman had seen Rowan before, when he was on the street begging in the cold. Even then, she had been completely impressed by how striking he was for a beggar kid. Rowan recognized her too, and wasted no time thanking her for the money she had given him back then. Her name was Caroline, and she was already his #1 fan even before walking through the door. She immediately started talking excitedly to the vice director, telling how she had seen that beautiful boy at an intersection last winter. And now, here he was, somehow looking even better than before. And when the vice director casually mentioned that Rowan had also just learned to read, Caroline lost it. She demanded that he read something today. Right then and there, the vice director tried to explain that he was only there to observe. Caroline looked visibly disappointed, but seeing how excited the guests were, the vice director gave in and asked Rowan to read the last chapter. No one was really prepared for what happened next. As soon as Rowan opened his mouth, the whole room fell silent. His voice had a special rhythm, soft, warm, almost hypnotic. The women in the audience were lost, eyes glazed, biting their lips and hearts beating a little faster than normal. By the time he finished the passage, the room practically exploded with compliments. Every sweet word you could imagine, those women threw at him. And Rowan, he stayed humble. He redirected all the credit to the vice director and said none of it would have been possible without her, which made the women adore him even more. Caroline immediately said she would come back tomorrow to hear him read. The vice director agreed without even blinking. Later that day, Rowan is back in the library making it his own, browsing shelves, but this time specifically looking for books on combining mana with physical movement. He's very focused on the search when Blake sneaks up behind him. Blake glances at the book Rowan is holding and raises an eyebrow because the book Rowan grabbed is about the pleasures of life. Rowan turns around and puts on a whole exaggerated reaction as if Blake had scared the life out of him, but he hadn't. Rowan had sensed him coming from afar. Blake had stopped by to congratulate him on the reading event. The news had spread fast, and Blake was genuinely annoyed to have missed it. Rowan told him not to worry. He knows Blake is busy here handling real responsibilities. Then Rowan asks him if there's any news on the union situation. Blake says, yeah, those guys are causing trouble again, but he plans to deal with them together with the administrators. Rowan immediately tells him he fully trusts him. Those union guys are going to get exactly what they deserve. And honestly, that felt different coming from Rowan. That kid just had that effect on people. Blake felt it. Blake mentions that he probably won't be able to make it to tomorrow's reading either, which is a shame. Rowan tells him not to worry. There will be plenty more opportunities. Then Rowan says something that takes Blake a bit by surprise, that he's more worried about Blake's safety than anything else, and that he should be careful out there. Blake wishes him luck too. Then as he leaves, he points to the book Rowan is still holding and tells him he should definitely read that one after the reading sessions, of course. Then he leaves. Rowan stands there alone in the silent library, just thinking. He's genuinely curious about what a fight between two people who have truly mastered mana control would look like. But more than that, he wants to know where he stands right now. What's his real level? Could he even begin to compare to someone like Blake? He starts circulating mana through his body just to feel it, and then he accidentally tears the book in two. The mana rushed straight into his grip and amplified his strength without warning. Rowan looks at the two halves of the book in his hands and says, well, that answers that question. So we cut to Rowan being summoned to the vice director's office, and the guy walks in with no idea what's about to happen. The vice director is sitting there, clearly struggling to figure out how to even start this conversation. And then it all comes out. Turns out our boy has completely sidelined all the other readers. Every single noblewoman who has attended one of his sessions now refuses to listen to anyone else. I mean, these women have been harassing the vice director so much that she's literally getting stress-induced gray hairs in real time. So now she's in the incredibly awkward position of having to sit down with a child and basically beg him to carry her entire business on his shoulders. Rowan doesn't even flinch, doesn't negotiate, doesn't ask for anything, just looks at her and says, sure, I'll do it. But then comes the twist. The vice director goes out and makes the big announcement about the special reader, and everyone is already mentally writing Rowan's name, but she calls Theo instead. The whole room goes completely frozen. Theo himself starts stuttering because he really can't process that he was chosen. The vice director congratulates him and sends him off. And even Theo, sweet, humble Theo, pulls Rowan aside before leaving and says, bro, your reading is on a whole different level. You're going to go somewhere amazing, which is really endearing, but also confirms that everyone in the building knows exactly what's going on here. Rowan watches him walk away and feels a small pang in his chest. It's not jealousy, it's more that he's going to miss the guy. But that feeling lasts about 30 seconds before Rowan is back in the reading room, sweeping these noble ladies off their feet again with his voice. And speaking of changes, the vice director calls him in again to give him the news that he now has a double shift, morning and afternoon sessions. She clearly feels bad about it. You can see it on her face, but the demand has completely spiraled out of control. Now anyone else would start negotiating or at least complain a little. Rowan sees it as an opportunity. He's genuinely grateful that people want to hear him so much. The only thing he asks for is small breaks between sessions because the emotional effort drains him every time. The vice director, who physically cannot say no to this kid, agrees immediately and just tells him not to wander beyond the backyard. Rowan triumphs and leaves. Finding calm, he immediately resumes his mana experiments. He reviews what he read. Concentrate mana at key points and bones, then spread it through his body. He's found the key. Mana doesn't respond to passive thoughts. It requires direct will and a real command, not a suggestion. When he executes the process correctly, his whole body lights up. When it fades, he's still hitting that barrier with his concentration, and he's still not sure if the problem is his technique or something deeper in his body. But he's not in a hurry. He'd rather build the foundation properly than burn himself out like he's seen others do. That thought reminds him of Blake, who had to carry him to the shelter when his legs gave out. He assumes the Union stopped chasing him at some point, one less problem for him. But there's something else that's been quietly bothering him. He's noticed that even people who are really skilled with mana can burn out completely if they push too hard, which sets his mind working. And if there's a way to access stored mana, or better yet, draw the ambient mana already floating in the environment and use it as if it were your own, and then it hits him. He's actually already been doing this in a way. When he channels mana into his voice and projects it outward, it's basically the same mechanism. If he can figure out how to mold external mana the same way he molds his own, the limit of what he can do practically disappears. He keeps experimenting with the theory in the garden. And then, a moment of inspiration, a single leaf rises from the ground and just floats in the air, suspended, doing absolutely nothing, and somehow it's the most incredible thing Rowan has ever seen. Our boy just invented something. Cut to the next special reader announcement. This time it's Lily. Everyone applauds. The vice director gives her usual send-off, a standard routine, except Lily doesn't move. She's standing there, completely nervous, looking at Rowan, visibly trying to gather the courage to say literally anything. She starts stuttering, and it becomes very, very obvious that this girl is about to confess. But before she can utter a single coherent word, the other kids in the room start talking loudly about how baffled they are that Rowan has been overlooked again, because by now everyone has done the math. The man is a goldmine. The vice director knows it, and she's deliberately holding him back here. The whole room erupts into conversations, and Lily's moment just gets crushed into oblivion. Rowan, noticing that she said something, turns to her and asks her to repeat it. Lily, who has already completely lost her chance, just walks away crying. Meanwhile, Rowan has already mentally moved on to something else, because his brain does its usual thing, and he runs off to a completely different place. He's thinking about how every special reader ends up placed with a good family, which means leaving the shelter, new environments, new people, and new experiences. And more than anything, more exposure to the world, more opportunities to learn, more data on mana storage. Curiosity is really eating at him now. The next day, during recess, he goes back to the garden to do the leaf levitation, and this time it's noticeably easier. Practice is working. Then, completely out of nowhere, he senses a trace of purple mana nearby, and he sees a man trying to sneak onto the shelter grounds. Rowan recognizes him. It's the big guy who first took him to the main building a long time ago, and then the big guy just falls. His mana goes out like a candle. Another man immediately runs over, and the two start talking in urgent, hushed voices. Rowan catches enough to make out one word, union, before he can even begin to process what he just witnessed. Someone tells him in a low voice to go back inside, act completely normal, and pretend he didn't see anything. Rowan goes back inside, still half paralyzed, replaying what just happened and finding absolutely no answers. Then things get even stranger. The afternoon reading session is canceled, and all the kids are told to go straight to their rooms. Everyone is confused, wondering what the hell is going on. Before anyone could figure anything out, Amy came to get our boy and told him to pack his things because today is the special reader. So we're back to Rowan getting ready, and something already feels strange. Amy's energy has completely changed, like she's a different person. That warmth and familiarity she usually has with him has evaporated. She's cold, distant, and serious, and it makes him nervous in a way he can't shake. He also keeps mulling over those two guys from earlier and what they mentioned about the union, and his gut is screaming that all of this is connected to why the afternoon session was canceled without even an explanation. He goes out and finds Amy already waiting, dressed up, ready to go, and not in the mood for conversation. She glances at his outfit, and there's a small flicker on her face like she's about to say something, but then she just tells him to follow her and starts walking. Rowan asks if they're taking him to Caroline, which honestly would have been the best-case scenario. Amy doesn't answer. She just walks. Somehow that's worse than a no, they're not going anywhere he recognizes. Instead, they head toward something called the Annex, a completely separate age shelter, and the moment Rowan sees it, his whole body tenses up. The place is dark, oppressive, and gives off pure bad vibes, and it's not just a feeling, he can actually sense it. The magical energy inside that building is wrong. Everyone there is carrying something heavy, something suspicious. The big guy escorts him as if time is an issue, and Rowan steals one last look at Amy's face before crossing the door, and he immediately feels that something is not right. And yes, this place is suspicious as hell. No windows, darker than expected, and Rowan makes a silent decision right then and there. He is not going to let his guard down for a single second, and he immediately uses his mana sense. Then the vice director's voice is heard from somewhere deeper in the building. He is led to a room that looks less like a room and more like a ritual altar, and before he can even understand the situation, he is told to sit down and read. Rowan looks at the specific book they want him to read, and then his eyes drift toward the huge well in the center of the room. That deep, dark hole descending much further than it should stares back at him, and then he understands. That's not just a well. That thing is absolutely loaded with mana, more than he has ever felt concentrated in one place. Dark mana. Anyway, he starts reading. Poetic, atmospheric, the kind of passage that fits perfectly with the suffocating energy of the room. And as the words leave his mouth, he can feel it. The dark mana from the well is responding, gathering, and drawing closer to him. The emotion hits him like a wave, uncontrollable, and his entire reading style turns darker without him even trying. But then a second thing hits him, and this one is a problem. The well isn't feeding him, he is feeding the well. His mana is being drained with every word, his body weakening phrase by phrase. Yet he cannot stop, and he knows it. If he stops now, the shelter gets exposed and the union intervenes. So he bears it and immediately starts formulating a plan. Absorb the external mana around him, and redirect the flow to protect himself. And it actually works. So now our boy is in complete control. He even feels a little relief wash over him. Now he can keep reading without exhausting himself and use his mana detection as soon as any union member shows up. So he deliberately stalls, drawing out the reading. However, the people who set all this up are getting nervous. The ritual should have ended by now. They decide someone should go see what's taking so long. Rowan already knows they're coming, but then something completely unexpected happens. Instead of coming toward him, the shelter people burst into the room and go down to the basement, straight into the well. Rowan watches them disappear below and thinks, what the hell are they really feeding down there? The scene cuts to the house director getting slapped directly in the face. The vice director grabs him. The guy running the ritual is furious, convinced they tried to abandon the entire operation. Meanwhile, our boy goes down the well, and his entire world crumbles in that instant. Real people were sacrificed for this ritual. He's still trying to process that horror when he sees a familiar face among them, Pauline, and then the angry guy from before, Rowan, standing there. At the same time, Blake bursts in demanding answers. Why are the director and vice director dead? This bastard answers that he killed them because they tried to run. That's when they found a strange fruit on the tree. Rowan was brought here to create one more fruit, but the process failed, and no one knows why. Blake looks frustrated, processing everything, and then he pulls his sword out of Pauline's body. Meanwhile, our boy stood there completely motionless like a statue because now he remembers. He once asked Blake why he never carried a sword. Blake told him they used his weapon somewhere else. That's when the bastard realizes what happened and his brother loses control, completely insane with absolute fury. Our boy does the right thing and mercilessly kills the guy next to him. He walks toward Blake, who notices he miscalculated. This 10-year-old child is radiating a dark aura unbecoming of his age. Rowan attacks him with force and speed before Blake finishes his monologue. Suddenly, the fight stops because Rowan is suddenly fixated on the dead, cursed tree, and he starts crying as if he had truly lost everything. Then he pushes his own mana into the tree and dives into the memories trapped inside it, and what he sees are brutalized and terrified children. Defenseless people, all of them gone, and then buried in all that horror he sees something unexpected, an older version of himself like an adult Ronin looking back at him. Before he can process any of that, the memory sequence cuts off. Rowan is yanked back, left with more questions than answers, but something has changed inside him. He feels as if he has reconnected with a woman he thought he had lost forever, and accompanying that feeling is Pauline's voice. He remembered what she had told him about how one is only truly alone when one's heart is empty, that as long as he keeps the people he loved, they never really leave. That love is not something you can see, it is something you feel. And even though the memories themselves may fade, the love remains. It lives forever in his heart. Blake puts a sword to his neck, and this arrogant guy tells Rowan that he had the decency to wait for his emotional moment because he always knew he was smart. His subordinates ruined the original plan. Sure, but now he's curious, so he gives the kid a choice. Come with him or die quietly here and now. Rowan, who has already decided in his head that this bastard is going to die, asks where they would go. Blake explains there is another farm, another tree. Rowan would take care of it. Blake would manage it and give him an official welcome to the Loodle. Now, if you're wondering what the Loodle is, basically it's a sect led by a fanatic who believes dark magic is the key to changing the world. Blake is nothing more than an errand boy for this guy, a little loyal servant. That's when Rowan asked the question in the coldest possible tone, his eyes completely empty, if Blake was the one who built the tree. Blake says no, he doesn't have that kind of power. That's the high priest's job. He just observes. Anyway, Blake is done talking. He wants an answer. I mean, bro, did you really need to ask that? You killed the woman who was his mother. Rowan told him no, and he doesn't hesitate to go straight for the kill. I want you to stop and think about this for a moment. This is the same man who treated Rowan like a little brother. Personally, I expected at least a moment of hesitation. But no, he really tried to kill this kid without flinching. Except that Rowan stops the blade with 2 fingers, using such precise external mana control that it makes Blake's brain collapse. Then Rowan asks quietly if Blake was the one who killed Pauline. Blake, still somehow arrogant, asks if Rowan wants revenge. Rowan snaps the sword in half and tells him he won't live to see tomorrow. And look, that line is already cold on its own, but it hits differently when you remember this is a grieving 10-year-old who just lost the closest thing to a mother he had. Then our boy punches him magically, and now this wretch is on the ground. Then, without another word, Rowan splits him in 2. Now that it's finally over, his senses sharpen as he senses a group approaching. Indeed, a whole squad arrives, ready to sweep the area and presumably judge everything they find. Leading the group is Oscar, sub-captain of the Union's Faith Division, who sees Rowan immediately and gets straight to the point. Is this kid using telekinesis? Rowan blinks as if he'd just been asked something extremely personal. Oscar rephrases. Did the Loodle teach you? You know, that magic stuff, those magical things. Rowan says no, he figured it out himself. Oscar almost chokes because honestly that's the craziest thing he's ever heard come out of a kid's mouth, and he's heard things. But the kid isn't lying. Oscar can tell, which makes it even worse. They start talking, and Rowan proceeds to completely show up Oscar. He recognizes his rank just by looking at his badge. Casually, he drops information about the Faith Division's reconnaissance operations. Then he shows off his telekinetic abilities, and one of Oscar's subordinates visibly has to compose himself because they weren't ready for that. One of his men pulls Oscar aside to whisper that the tree was cultivated less than 2 years ago and that the binding spell has been undone. Although Oscar notes that any high priest would have left mana traces unless it was Father Sion. Meanwhile, Rowan is just staring at the tree, the house, the one belonging to Lily, silently consumed by guilt for not being kinder to them when he had the chance. He asks Oscar how many trees like this one he has found on his missions, essentially asking, how far does this go? How big is this? Oscar replies, but watches Rowan the whole time because a normal kid in this situation would be losing it, crying, trembling, completely falling apart. But this kid, he's different. He's focused, controlled, and he already knows what he wants to do next. Rowan asks to join the Faith Division. Oscar thinks the kid is in shock and is just incredibly good at hiding it, better than most adults, honestly. He tells them that investigations will be handled and takes him away. He tells them that they will do a special investigation first before making any decision and instructs him to follow him. As Rowan walks away from everything, from the tree, from the bodies, from the whole grim scene, his gaze stops on something on the body of the dead vice director, a single coin just sitting there unclaimed. He pockets it without breaking stride. So we cut to the outside of the building, and one of Oscar's men is giving the official damage report, and here's the gist. The Faith Division came out completely unscathed. As for the death toll, 13 from the cult side and 3 from the shelter. As for the suspects, they've narrowed it down to 2 people, and apparently one of them is Amy and the high priests and the bigwigs of the Loodle group. Turns out they only prepared the ritual space. They didn't actually break it. So the investigation is ongoing because no one can understand how it all fell apart from the beginning. With the report finished, Oscar turns to Rowan and asks where the kid feels most comfortable. Rowan says the library, and Oscar replies, "All right, let's go to the library, you lead." In the next scene, they are both sitting in the library having a real conversation. Oscar starts the conversation by pointing out that even here, surrounded by books, there isn't a single one on mana cultivation. He's dying to know how he learned magic on his own. Rowan says, "I'm smart, I figured it out." Faced with such confidence, Oscar admitted, tells the truth, he has incredible talent. Still, he needed to hear Rowan's full account of everything that had happened. So Rowan tells him everything, starting from the first moment he arrived at the shelter, all the way to the conclusion that Pauline was, most likely, the one who passed on her abilities to him. After hearing the whole story, Oscar still sits there with a ton of questions because nothing about this kid makes sense. Like Rowan has no training in mana handling whatsoever, none, and yet he managed to kill 2 members of a Loodle organization, one of whom was Blake, an experienced swordsman. Not only that, but he somehow also managed to break a high priest's ritual, which isn't something you just stumble into doing. On top of all that, the kid is using telekinesis without uttering a single magic word, which apparently is not normal. And to top it off, he doesn't even seem tired. This kid just rewrote the rules of magic like it was nothing and didn't even break a sweat. Meanwhile, Rowan is curious about the tree and wants to know what it really was. Oscar explains everything simply. It's a ritual artifact created by the Loodle, specifically for harvesting human life. The main purpose is to produce a fruit made of condensed life energy, basically solidified mana in physical form, making it incredibly valuable on the black market. The fruit is consumed, and whoever eats it gets a direct increase in their mana capacity. As for why the reading was involved in the ritual, certain specific conditions need to be met to stabilize the tree and improve the quality of the fruit. Apparently, reading aloud achieves exactly that. Rowan connects the dots immediately. He remembers how the tree seemed interested in his story, almost as if it were listening. That's why it stabilized and the reading worked correctly. And then he goes one step further and realizes that before these things were trees, they were real human beings. Oscar is truly impressed. That's exactly what he had also figured out, and this 10-year-old just discovered it all on his own. Then Rowan asks what telekinesis really means because he keeps hearing that word. Oscar explains that it's a type of magic that allows you to move objects using mana. Rowan demonstrates it right there and finally understands. He's been using magic all this time without even knowing it. The kid had no idea. Oscar notes that, although he's still at a beginner level, the fact that a child his age can do this is truly remarkable. Now Oscar remembers something. Rowan mentioned he wanted to join the Faith Division, and after everything the kid just went through, being betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect him, Oscar really wants to understand why. The Faith Division and the Union are the same organization, just with different names, so it's not a minor commitment. Rowan is honest about it. He doesn't fully trust the Faith Division yet, but his gut tells him Oscar is a good person. He can feel it in his mana. Oscar is a bit taken aback to hear a 10-year-old describe him as pure and tells the kid that trusting people just based on feelings might get him killed someday. Rowan replies by saying he's good at reading people, but Oscar gently stops him. It's not that simple. Involving a child in their operations is not something he can approve so easily. Rowan starts to wonder if he's too weak, too inexperienced, but Oscar stops him and tells him to listen carefully in life. Raw talent isn't everything. His tone turns serious and Rowan's mood drops immediately. Pout mode activated. Oscar clarifies that there's nothing wrong with Rowan. The problem is that making exceptions for outsiders is complicated and the child is very young. Rowan, without missing a beat, asks the obvious question. Is age really more important than actual ability? That hits hard. Oscar pauses because the honest answer is that Rowan just defeated 2 adult men. The talent is real, but the Union frustratingly measures experience by age, not by ability. Oscar admits it. Rowan asks if that means he's too immature for them, and that's when Oscar decides to give the kid a real chance, reframes the entire conversation as a practice interview, and starts asking real questions. First, why did Rowan kill Edgar? Edgar was not an immediate threat at that moment. Rowan answers without hesitation. Edgar had already killed the shelter owner and his wife. The pattern was obvious. Hesitating would have only meant that Rowan would be next. Oscar acknowledges that point but presses further. The kid still killed 2 people. Emotions could have clouded his judgment. Rowan agrees that yes, his emotions were part of it and he is not ashamed of that. He also maintains that emotions do not always cloud judgment. Sometimes they bring clarity. To him, those men had taken innocent lives. There was nothing to redeem, no reason to forgive them. And if he had the power to impart justice at that moment, that was exactly what he did. Oscar asks the big question. Did Rowan have the right to kill them? Rowan says that, given the circumstances, it was the most just outcome. He had the power and he used it, but he is not hiding it either. He knows he killed someone. He is not making excuses, he simply owns it. Oscar insists one more time. Was it really necessary? And Rowan, without thinking for even a second, said yes, it was absolutely necessary. There are people whose entire job is to carry out executions. Then he looks Oscar directly in the eyes and tells him that is what the Union does too. And for a moment Oscar simply stares at him because the kid is right. He takes a moment to explain what the Union truly represents. Yes, they impart justice, but at its core their goal is a world full of happiness and laughter. A world that is safe, peaceful, and stable for every generation that comes after. It is an impossible ideal. They know they will never fully achieve it, but it is the goal they pursue anyway. That is the real purpose of the Union. And the fact that Rowan, at only 10 years old, somehow already understands that truly impresses Oscar. He tells Rowan about an organization called La Tumba, a powerful and shadowy group that threatens the entire kingdom. The sect they just dealt with is only a branch of it. The Union's first division has been working to dismantle La Tumba piece by piece, and Oscar believes that with Rowan's help they might actually be able to finish the job. Rowan is confused about what his role is, so Oscar explains it clearly. Rowan joins the Union, proves his worth, and earns his place. Simple as that. Until then, Oscar only wants the kid to live up to his own potential. With the meeting over outside, Oscar addresses his team. He announces that the involvement of the Tungtun shelter in helping La Tumba has been confirmed and resolved. The Union was successful. The darkness in this area has been eliminated. The shelter will return to normal operations. Then he gives the signal and the division begins to mobilize. Before leaving, Oscar calls over this 10 out of 10 elf, Sienna. She enters and impresses with her intense blue mana. Oscar asks her to take Rowan to the Union safely. Wow, this guy's luck would make anyone sell their soul to switch places with a 10-year-old. Sienna introduces herself, pillar of faith, 2-week journey, pack anything important, all business, sharp and rehearsed tone. Rowan has nothing to pack. She raises an eyebrow, gives him one last chance. Then she opens the floor for questions as if challenging him to waste her time. Rowan immediately asks about her race, dark elf. Then, because he has absolutely no filter, he blurts out that he expected dark elves to have a much darker aura, because hers is bright, even radiant. Sienna looks at him the way you look at something that can't be fully categorized. She tells him it's probably his lineage affecting his perception and drops the subject, curtly. Oscar says goodbye, and true to Rowan's style, the kid turns to the rest of the team and sincerely tells them to take care. The whole team falls silent, as if they aren't used to that kind of thing. The scene shifts, and Rowan and Sienna are setting up camp in the middle of nowhere. Then Sienna pulls out a small handmade sheath she has been working on in the background and hands it to our boy. Rowan gets so excited that he becomes very respectful, treating her like royalty. Sienna tells him, don't do that, calling her big sister was weird, so Rowan decides to call her Sienna since they'll be working together. It's such a clumsy solution that Sienna turns away to hide how much it affected her. A dark elf assassin getting flustered because of a kid. Then Rowan starts playing with his telekinesis, making his broken sword spin in the air, and Sienna just watches, thinking, what the hell is this power? Rowan mentions that the sub-captain called it telekinetic magic, and Sienna replies, yes, sure, it's the closest thing we have, but honestly that word doesn't do it justice. Rowan is confused, so she explains, his magic is truly one of a kind. Most mages need to recite spells, draw magic circles, and go through a whole ritual just to touch mana. He just does it without instructions or help. She says that pure mana control was characteristic of ancient elves, before they split into dark, high, and others. Then she looks him directly in the eyes and tells him that just by the color of his eyes, she knows his parents were definitely not ordinary people. That hits differently. Rowan falls silent thinking about them. The next day they arrive at the Union, and brother, this place is nothing like Rowan expected. It's basically an entire city. Sienna is giving him the grand tour, explaining that there's a residential district and a commercial district. But the real fortress isn't the buildings, it's the people. All races from the continent come here. Most powerful warriors and mages in the world have literally set up their bases here, specifically to protect ordinary people from psychos like Latumba. That's why it's called the Sword and the Book of the Continent. It has both strength and intelligence. Rowan is absorbing all of this like a sponge, eyes wide open, mentally filing away every detail. Then they are intercepted. A guy named Lazarus appears, director of the Union's management department, and immediately fixes his attention on Rowan. Right away, he pulls him aside for a private chat, and they end up in a room that is aggressively bright, almost suspiciously so. Rowan detects it mentally instantly because this kid notices everything. Now, Rowan already knows this place is where all the heavyweights gather, but what really catches his attention about Lazarus is his aura. It's not flashy or intimidating. It's perfectly controlled, not a single drop wasted, and somehow that's much more impressive than any flashy display. Rowan starts silently calculating just how strong this guy really is. Then Lazarus does something unexpected. He politely asks for Rowan's hand and holds it with both hands, and the instant he does, Rowan feels it. This man is doing the exact same mana control that Rowan does, only on a completely different level. Rowan drew stick figures, and this guy paints the Sistine Chapel. Without being scared, Rowan is excited. He didn't know others could do it. He didn't know it was even possible to go that far. The man is practically vibrating with excitement. Then Lazarus's eyes slide to the coin hanging from Rowan, the one he took from the vice director. Before the man can even ask, Rowan clarifies the situation. He didn't steal it. It was his grandmother's. He just retrieved what was already his. Lazarus asks to see the emblem he has, and this is where things get interesting. He asks politely, but Rowan's body simply doesn't move. He tries to pull his hand back, nothing. He tries to shift his weight, nothing. Lazarus has basically intertwined his mana, pinning him in place without making a single aggressive move. It's the politest jail cell Rowan has ever been in. So Rowan thinks in real time, if he can withstand both gravity pressure and mana pressure at the same time, maybe he can slip out. He tries, and he actually succeeds. Lazarus looks genuinely impressed. But Rowan is already annoyed with himself, because really all he did was copy the director's technique. Nothing original, except Lazarus also noticed that, and he's even more impressed by it. Lazarus examines the emblem, and for the first time his perfect mana control wavers for just a fraction of a second. Rowan notices it instantly. The director thanks him sincerely, not just out of politeness, but because he showed him something he had been wondering about for a long time. Rowan, still curious, asks directly, "Are you the strongest person in the Union?" Lazarus laughs and brushes it off, calling himself just an old raccoon who helps the next generation. Rowan takes it literally and doesn't catch the joke, typical of him. Lazarus replies, "The 17 captains are scary, but the commander is on another level. Then there's the governor and the high command. Compared to them, the raccoon thing makes sense." Rowan asks if he can come back another time with more questions. Lazarus tells him, "Sure, you just have to make an appointment." When it's over, Rowan defines Lazarus as someone good and strong. He thinks he's praising him a lot, leaves with confidence for having joined the Union, and finally sees his new home, the Union Academy. Sienna explains that it's where Union members send their children when they're away on long missions. which basically makes the school a place full of kids who grew up in this environment. It's not a specialized school. They teach swordsmanship, magic, martial arts, everything, training students from scratch. The idea is that 5 years here could turn Rowan into someone truly terrifying. As soon as she mentions the word school, something inside Rowan lights up. We cut to the next day, and our boy looks impeccable in his new uniform, ready and stylish to learn. He asks the woman if she is a teacher, and she replies, "Ah shit, I forgot to introduce myself properly." Turns out she is Daphne, the head of academic affairs and a language teacher. Basically, she's pretty important. She hands him the first-year class schedule with a list of elective subjects he can choose from. And brother, the options are brutal. Mana manipulation, swordsmanship, astronomy, all sorts of cool stuff. Our boy looks at this menu of knowledge and his eyes light up. So what does he do? He checks every single box. When Daphne gets the paper back, her jaw drops to the floor. She tells him, "Are you crazy, kid? This workload would finish most students. If you fail even one of these classes, you're screwed." But our boy is sitting there like, what's the problem? Because he truly doesn't understand why anyone would find studying difficult. Daphne looks at him like he's an alien because what kind of kid wants to study everything? Most kids would rather eat dirt than do homework, but this little psychopath is different. She tries to warn him about the absurd amount of homework he'll have, but he doesn't budge. Finally, she just gives up and accepts his list, probably thinking, you know what? Let him learn the hard way. She tells him to follow her to his first class. In the next scene, our boy enters the classroom behind Daphne, and his eyes look everywhere, absorbing everything. He immediately notices something important. All the kids in this room have much denser mana than him. This confirms what he already suspected. His body is the problem, not his ability. Anyway, Daphne introduces him as the transfer student who arrived late and gives him the floor. Rowan steps forward to introduce himself, and memories of those reading sessions in the shelter come back to him, so this feels familiar. He gives a polite and sincere introduction about his desire to get along with everyone. And brother, his voice, this kid's voice is so soft and sincere that it literally moves the teacher's heart. Look at this little bastard already winning over the teacher. Once our boy takes his seat, class begins. Daphne tells everyone to open to page 24 and asks Rowan to read, since she knows he learned at the shelter. He opens the book and recognizes it immediately. It's the same damn book Amy used to test him with. His mind goes back to the shelter where he used to read beautifully with that elegant tone that had everyone hypnotized. But now it feels strange because Amy, the girl who taught him, turned out to be part of the Loodle group that betrayed him. Still, our boy is mature for his age. He's thinking that maybe he should give her a chance to explain because he doesn't actually know her side of the story yet. In his head, he thinks. People are much more complicated than textbooks, which is a pretty profound thing for a kid to think. By the time he finishes reading the passage, the whole class bursts into applause. Even the teacher keeps praising how talented he is, praising the school for having gotten such a gifted student. After class, some kids approach him and say, "Hey, you're amazing. Daphne is never impressed with students, but you left her stunned." Our boy is gaining admirers everywhere, but then a girl with short hair and green eyes approaches him. The moment he sees her, something clicks. He recognizes her from that vision he had. She introduces herself as Sophie Poulabelle, the class president and student representative. They shake hands, and she asks him what elective he chose. He mentions swordsmanship, and she notices he's only carrying a small dagger. So she tells him, "You're trying to join the union." Rowan is confused because he literally just wanted to study everything. He wasn't thinking about the union at all, but now he's curious, so he asks if you need swordsmanship to join. Sophie gives him a weird look like, "Seriously, bro?" which makes him wonder if he just said something stupid. In the next scene, all the students arrive at the training field where the instructor is waiting. Suddenly, everyone takes off running toward the instructor, and our boy just stands there like, "What the hell?" They shout back, "We're getting ahead." But that's not even the craziest part. The really crazy part is that everyone is using mana to boost their speed. Rowan's eyes light up because now he understands. We're doing this? You bet he activates his own mana and flies past all the students despite having started far behind. Even Sophie is watching this unfold like, this kid is not normal. She can tell his speed isn't natural because he makes it look too easy. Meanwhile, our boy doesn't care about the race or winning it. He's having the time of his life, laughing and challenging everyone to catch him. All this commotion caught the instructor's attention. He turns around and sees this tiny kid flying across the training field and thinks, "I need to keep an eye on this one." A few moments later, the race ends. Everyone is panting, cursing whoever thought this was a good idea. Meanwhile, our boy is relaxed. Everyone gathers for the assembly, and Rowan is just happy to have found people who can use mana like him. Meanwhile, Sophie is having an existential crisis thinking, is this kid even human? The way he accelerated, the way he lapped everyone, and the fact that he's not even tired, she's convinced he might be a demon. Rowan notices her staring at him and cheerfully asks, "Did you enjoy the race?" Internally, Sophie is screaming, thinking this little demon humiliated us all and still has the nerve to ask if we had fun. After everyone catches their breath, the instructor finally introduces himself as Diego Sanchez, a swordsmanship master and their teacher for this class. Our boy is super excited to learn from this guy. Diego tells everyone to grab a wooden sword, and you can see the suffering on these kids' faces because they're still exhausted from that death race earlier. But here's the thing, Rowan is just standing there, frozen. Diego tells him, "Kid, move it already," but our boy hesitates, staring at that wooden sword like it's going to bite him. He's having traumatic memories of Blake, and Diego notices it immediately. The instructor can see the fear in his eyes, so he shares a bit of wisdom. "Look, a sword can be dangerous, sure, but at the end of the day, it's just a tool. The sword has no intentions. It reveals the character of the person wielding it. That's why you have to face this fear," and wow, that really hit home for our boy. He has a moment of revelation like, wait, if Blake had beaten me with a staff instead of a sword, would I be afraid of staves now? He realizes the problem isn't swords, but the person wielding them, so he steps forward and grabs the blade, thinking to himself that he doesn't need to become a legendary sword master, but he shouldn't be running away from this either. Diego watches him take the sword and immediately notices two things. The kid has natural talent in the way he holds it, but he lacks willpower. The instructor announces they're going to do practice sparring in pairs, and any fighting method is allowed as long as you defeat your opponent. Then Diego drops the bomb. Rowan is paired with Sophie. Both of them are like, what? And the other kids are already betting, saying Sophie is going to destroy him because she comes from a prestigious family of swordsmen and she has real training. The professor gives them the signal to prepare and the match begins. Sophie adopts a wide stance with her sword, looking super professional and everything, observing our boy like a hawk. Rowan is just standing there thinking, so this is what real swordsmanship looks like. He's actually impressed by how she controls her weapon. Feels completely different from the terrifying experience he had with Blake. He's adjusting his own sword, wondering what good swordsmanship really means, when naturally he adopts his own stance. The moment he does, both Diego and Sophie's eyes go wide. This kid just achieved a perfect neutral stance on his first try like it was nothing. It's the kind of thing that should be impossible for a beginner, but here we are. Sophie is shocked, but she doesn't plan to lose because her family's pride is at stake. She lunges with her first attack, completely determined. Rowan dodges. Sophie attacks again. He dodges. She aims for his chest. He's already moving away. She tries from another angle. Nope, he saw that coming too. She's getting more and more frustrated because this kid reads her like an open book, dodging and blocking every move she makes. It's like he can see the future or something. Finally, Sophie is being pushed back, completely on the defensive, and she's mentally falling apart because her cautious opponent has predicted every single one of her moves. At last, she admits defeat and asks for a rematch. Our boy smiles and accepts. When it's all over, they end up chatting for a while, and Sophie is really impressed by his natural talent. Turns out they fought a total of 4 times and ended up tied 2-2. Sophie gets excited, thinking she found someone to train with. The others are happy that magic class will give them a break, but Rowan asks confused if it's not a key class for the union. Everyone looks at him like he's a weirdo. One kid comments, "Bro, the teacher is so advanced that it's impossible to learn from him." Rowan replies, "Magic is difficult, but is the teacher really that bad?" The others notice he doesn't know the basics. They explain that the guy teaching them basic magic is a former commander and the dean of magic at the academy, the legendary Professor Arthur himself. Cut to a few moments later, and magic class has already started. Professor Arthur enters, and Sophie starts whispering to Rowan about how this guy used to be a legendary commander in his day. Basically, he's the Chuck Norris of magic. Our boy is analyzing the professor's mana and realizes it's even denser than the director's. At this point, Rowan wonders, who the hell is the strongest person in the union? And more importantly, can I challenge them to an arm wrestle? Arthur notices the kid and introduces himself as the magic professor, adding that his class is usually unbearable. But Rowan, excited, longs to become a mage and join the guild. This cheers up the old professor, who praises his spirit but warns him, following magic means abandoning the path of swordsmanship, you know. And that's when it hits Rowan. That's why his classmates gave him weird looks earlier. So he asks why that is. And Arthur tells Sophie to explain. She explains it simply. To master magic, you need to learn an insane amount of knowledge, and that takes a huge toll on your body and mind. Even if you have talent, you won't be recognized as a true mage without at least 10 years of training. Arthur confirms this and adds that it's already hard enough to become a union member after graduation. But here's the kicker. Being a first-class mage isn't even enough to be an active member. You need to reach at least second class. After hearing all this, our boy is a bit disappointed, but then says, okay, I bet I'll reach third class before I graduate. Everyone's jaws drop because this kid clearly has no idea what third-class magic really means. Arthur tries not to laugh as he writes on the blackboard, explaining that swordsmanship is the union's main focus, while magic is for seeking knowledge and wisdom. Then he draws this super complex formula to create a simple fire arrow spell. But there's something weird about it, and our boy notices it immediately because he's already seen that exact formula before at the ritual well. Arthur is impressed, explaining that most students wouldn't notice the mistake because it looks very complicated. He mentions that, although a fire arrow is considered basic, more advanced spells are exponentially harder. Then he demonstrates the spell, creating a beautiful fire arrow in front of everyone. But Rowan notices something strange. The arrow seems unstable, like it's about to fade away at any moment, a bit like my motivation on a Sunday night. Arthur explains that magic formulas must be perfect. Even a small mistake after using all that mana can destroy the spell completely. Then, carefully, he adds one last component to the formula. And boom, the arrow suddenly becomes much larger and more powerful. Everyone is hypnotized by the demonstration, probably thinking, wow, that's hot, because it literally is. It's fire. Arthur shares more knowledge. Mages have to memorize these formulas and make sure they're perfect every time. Adjusting a spell requires incredible patience and skill, like turning a fire arrow into a fireball, which uses more mana and puts more pressure on your mind and body. On top of that, magic has many more limitations compared to swordsmanship. Sophie chimes in, explaining that channeling mana directly into a weapon is usually easier and more efficient than casting complex spells. The instructor adds that using mana is extremely exhausting, so a mage's power depends entirely on their personal mana reserves. Rowan is starting to connect the dots now. He understands that a mage's abilities are limited by the size of their mana reserve. And if that's true, then his low natural mana level is going to be a huge problem. Still, he thinks that maybe if he studies the principles enough, he can find some kind of solution, even if it seems unlikely. Professor Arthur tests him with a question, asking him what it takes to cast a spell. Rowan answers correctly that you need a formula, but then adds that these formulas would be impossible for mages to remember in the middle of a battle. That's why they developed magic circles, which represent the principles of the formula. Suddenly, Rowan has another revelation. Those tattoos he saw on the shelter director's arm were actually a magic circle and not a midlife crisis with questionable ink choices. Arthur confirms that some mages engrave these circles on their bodies to cast spells faster. The magic circle is basically a symbol. If the formula is the equation, the magic circle is its symbolic representation. Then Rowan throws another question at them. Is chanting just the verbal conversion of the formula? Arthur is surprised because, damn, this kid just figured that out on his first day. Meanwhile, some students have been here for 3 years and still can't figure out which end of the wand to point at things. Rowan explains his reasoning. The formula on the blackboard is like a blueprint for creating a fireball. If the magic circle is a symbol, then chanting must be the linguistic conversion of the same spell. Now the professor smiles with pride because this is a concept that many mages spend years studying. Arthur confirms that chanting consists of saying the right words and infusing mana into each one to create an invocation. To demonstrate, he launches a powerful fireball using only his voice. He also mentions that speed, tone, and emotional state affect the spell, making it similar to a recitation. And our boy is absolutely fascinated. No recitation in his entire life had captivated him like this one. The professor is worried he might have scared Rowan with all this complexity, so he asks if he still wants to pursue his ambitious goal. Our boy's response: of course, now I'm even more interested. Arthur is pleased and decides to start the class by teaching ancient languages. He hands out books for everyone to decipher, and you can see the desperation on these kids' faces. At the end of class, Sophie is completely exhausted by all the homework. She's regretting signing up for so many classes this semester. Meanwhile, Rowan is sitting there, completely fine, unfazed, because this absolute madman filled his entire schedule with classes. No breaks, nothing. His curiosity is so intense that, in fact, he's already annoying Sophie at this point. She mentions that her roommate is someone named Lucas, but that name doesn't ring a bell for Rowan. She says goodbye and leaves. Back in his dorm, our boy is already hitting it hard. He's trying to understand the spell based on the formula, thinking that since he doesn't have the mana reserves to use powerful magic the normal way, maybe he can create a new type of magic more suited to his abilities. And somehow, to his total surprise, he actually manages to create a functional spell. This is crazy. It's an incredible achievement, but there's a catch. The physical toll it took on his body was brutal. Spell worked, but it left him completely unconscious. When Lucas returns to the room, he finds Rowan passed out on the floor, and he just stands there like, what the hell happened here? The scene shifts, and while our boy is completely unconscious, he starts to hear a familiar voice calling him. It's Sienna, and she's here feeling guilty, blaming herself and the other teachers for pushing him too hard. Everyone thought he was a prodigy genius who could handle anything thrown at him, but clearly they messed up. Finally, our boy opens his eyes, and the first thing he sees is Lucas leaning over him like a worried mother hen. This guy is relieved, genuinely happy that Rowan didn't die or anything. He introduces himself as Lucas Bonparcel, Rowan's new roommate, and thanks God he didn't find a corpse, because finding your roommate passed out is not a great start to the semester. Rowan is sitting there, more confused than anything, thinking, wait, I passed out. Apparently yes, but it's nothing life-threatening or anything. What he can't understand is why Lucas is acting like his helicopter mom right now. Turns out Lucas's dad, who happens to be Oscar the sub-captain, specifically ordered his son to watch Rowan's back. And this guy really expects Rowan to say something nice about him to his dear old dad. From how relaxed Lucas seems, Rowan thinks he's trustworthy enough. Also, can we talk about how huge Lucas is? Seriously, you'd swear this guy is a senior, but no. He's in the same year as Rowan, though he is 2 years older. And before you think he's a late bloomer who started school late, let me stop you right there. My friend has failed the attendance requirements twice. This absolute legend is a professional at not showing up to class. He doesn't like studying either. Lucas asks if Rowan passed out doing magic. Makes sense because his room looks like a war zone. Rowan confirms he was trying to cast a fireball, but then he doesn't remember anything. Lucas, who's more into swords, admits he's a bit disappointed that Rowan isn't using his obvious talent with a sword, since he's basically following in his father's footsteps anyway. Rowan is looking at Lucas and noticing some things, even though the guy is 2 years older. His mana is much denser than other students, and his physique is absolutely muscular. Our boy is genuinely impressed by the effort Lucas has put in and feels a bit insecure about falling behind. Despite having just woken up after passing out, Rowan is ready to drag himself to class like nothing happened. Rowan nods but teases him. This is why you failed twice. You skip class for any reason. Cut to when they find a place to eat, and Lucas insists that Rowan has to stuff himself to recover. Rowan notices a trace of mana nearby. He says, let's go check it out, and they go to a magic shop. Inside, Rowan notices that most of the objects are imbued with mana, while Lucas is in a corner sneezing like he's allergic to the whole shop because of the dust. Then Rowan is hit with the horrible reality. He's broke, completely, absolutely, devastatingly broke. He regrets not saving money from the shelter, but Lucas offers to pay since it's technically part of his dad's task. This guy is really earning his best friend card. Our boy decides to test the waters and jokingly asks Lucas to buy everything in the shop. Lucas pulls out a sad handful of coins that won't cover anything, but at least it should cover one item. So Rowan starts looking for something that fits his roommate's peasant budget. Then something catches his attention. An egg with a strange magic circle carved into it. It emits an intense and murky mana signature that is honestly fascinating. And the best part is that the price is ridiculously low. The shop owner approaches and explains that he's looking at the Galatia stone, which most people only use as a fancy decorative piece for the house. Everyone assumes the egg will never hatch. So basically, it's a useless paperweight that looks cool on a shelf. Rowan asks what's inside, but even the owner doesn't know. According to legend, the stone acts as a cage for some mysterious creature. The owner bought it to resell, but nobody wanted it since it didn't hatch. Rowan wants to see if breaking the seal works, but the owner tells him not to get his hopes up. Only a unique spell could open it, but our boy is already hooked. He can tell this magic circle is expert level, at least a dozen times more complex than a simple fireball spell. He asks Lucas what he thinks, and Lucas just shrugs like it's cooler than a boring book. Plus, you could crack someone's head open with this if needed. Impeccable logic. Rowan decides to buy the stone and leaves thrilled with his mysterious magical egg. It's already night, but Lucas wants to end his skipping day with a bang. He suggests they visit the most impressive place in the entire Union, the clock tower. Now that's really being different. And finally, there's the governor, the highest authority of the entire continent, with a rank equivalent to a king. Standing there, looking at the clock tower from afar, Rowan reflects on the very long road ahead of him to reach the level of those legendary figures. But you can see it in his eyes. He is determined at all costs to stand among them someday. Rowan and Lucas stayed at probably the most impressive place in the entire Union until the sun set and night took over. Our boy is absolutely fascinated by this watchtower and its immense height. You can literally see this thing from almost anywhere in the Union, even from the academy. Curiosity gets the better of him, so he asks Lucas what the red hands on the clock mean and how to read them. Lucas scratches his head and squints his eyes like he's trying really hard to remember. After forcing his two brain cells to work together, he finally remembers that the characters on the outer red band show the current year. Rowan steps closer to look better and realizes the symbols are in ancient languages. Then Lucas just gives up and admits he never learned to read these clocks. My friend has lived here his whole life and never bothered to find out. Rowan uses all his intelligence and figures it out. He says year 262, which makes sense, since they are currently in year 262 of the kingdom. From there, he deciphers the other spheres for the month and day. It's 7:20 p.m. on June 14, 262. He took a minute to figure it out, but Lucas, raised in front of this tower, never bothered to learn. Things get very serious here. Rowan becomes obsessed with the tower because he already saw it in his grim vision of the tree. That illusion showed the clock tower as the epicenter of an apocalypse. If he remembers correctly, the clock read June 14, exactly 10 years from now. After resting, the roommates return to their room. Once Lucas confirms Rowan isn't going to pass out again, he grabs his wooden sword and leaves. This guy can skip all the classes he wants, but he never misses a training session. If he skips even one day of physical work, he feels his body getting slow. So our boy is left alone with his spiraling thoughts. That apocalyptic vision the mysterious tree showed him is impossible to forget. There's a strong possibility it wasn't just any nightmare. It could have been a true precognitive dream showing him the actual future. And if that's true, he needs to change it. To organize his thoughts, Rowan closes his eyes and enters his mental palace. Step 1. Gather as much information as possible from the memories stored in his brain. With his perfect memory ability, he reviews the images of the clock tower he saw before, reconstructing every tiny detail with perfect precision, as if he were building a 3D model in his mind. Once he's satisfied, he moves to the next step, filling in gaps and blind spots in chronological order. Rowan identifies specific things that appeared in the past that would later cause deaths in the possible future he witnessed. Buildings, rooftops, structures, everything is accounted for. He remembers seeing the corpse of someone who died from a roof collapse. Our boy overlaps his reality with his dark vision, weaving each scene like a detective from hell. After filtering out the essentials, he evokes that dreadful illusion. He recreates the scene the tree shared with him and improves the areas where he can add more details. For a moment, he hesitates. He doesn't want to relive that painful nightmare again, but then he remembers more. The bodies on the ground looked like his friends. Sophie, Lucas, and Sienna were there, lifeless and a bit older. That's the kind of future he absolutely refuses to accept. That makes him see how weak and pathetic he is now and the complete failure he will become if he doesn't change things. He wants to know what rank he managed to reach in that vision, so he searches through the mountains of data in his mind. After digging through everything, he finds it. That single persistent scene showing his future self. From the default angle of the vision, his rank insignia is not visible, but Rowan doesn't give up so easily. His analytical mind develops a method to actually change the viewing angle of the memory, which requires him to immerse himself much deeper into the shared vision of the burning union. After confirming all the details are secured, he continues, directing his full attention to the image of his supposed future self. He focuses on the chest of his future self to clearly see the rank insignia, and then he sees something absolutely horrifying. Young Rowan feels his blood run cold. At first, it's hard to make out, but his future self looks bloody and beaten where his rank insignia should be. His chest is a huge open wound, exposing his entrails like a bloody scene. Turns out his friends aren't the only ones destined for a terrible fate. Rowan himself is going to die in a brutal way. After forcing himself through that traumatic mental experience, he withdraws. He pulls his consciousness out of the nightmare vision and slowly opens his eyes, sitting there alone with his soul shattered and his mind racing. He wonders if the vision was some kind of warning from the tree. The fall of the Union means the death of the kingdom and the continent. It would literally be the end of the world and the complete extinction of humanity. From what he understands, the tree is a creation of black magic made from human mana, shaped by sacrificed victims trapped between life and death. On top of all the horrible scenes, there was also a mysterious hooded figure present in the vision. Maybe that person holds the key to understanding everything. Rowan maintains a healthy skepticism about whether what he witnessed is real. But to make sure that nightmare scene doesn't happen, he needs to create a different future, using the fragments of information he has. The most effective method: start by changing himself. With a grim future, lost rank, and wearing the black suit, avoiding joining the union could cause a butterfly effect in the timeline. Maybe he could take a position in the management office to wear a red suit, or in a crazy option, aim for the unprecedented white suit of the commander before the vision comes true in 10 years. The next day, the roommates get ready for class. Lucas reminds Rowan that Professor Daphne asked him to stop by the teacher's office before class. After delivering the message, Lucas goes to campus alone, ready to skip classes later. Rowan wonders why Daphne would want to see him privately. It doesn't bode well. He puts on his uniform and goes to the office, where Daphne greets him worriedly, asking how he's feeling after his fainting spell yesterday. Turns out Lucas ratted him out. Well, actually, he informed her, and she was kind enough to mark it as a medical absence, so Rowan won't have academic trouble. She looks at his schedule like he's crazy, telling him he's taken too many elective subjects and basically begging him to drop some before he exhausts himself again. But Rowan? No, he doesn't budge. The guy keeps every single one of his classes. In fact, he's super excited about the ones he hasn't even attended yet. Professor Daphne is here feeling guilty, thinking she caused his collapse, but our boy just smiles and reassures her, telling her it will never happen again. She gives him one last speech of please, seek help if you need it, and he thanks her with the utmost sincerity before leaving for his first class. The thing is, nowadays, Rowan's mana cultivation is so natural that he does it like breathing. Training doesn't even take him that much time anymore. But what really matters is that our boy has found a new mission. He wants to turn all his friends into absolute powerhouses. As soon as he enters the classroom, everyone turns their heads to look at him with that face of "Bro, are you okay?" The worry is written on their faces. Everyone had heard about the incident and was genuinely concerned. This moves Rowan and only motivates him more to help them improve. His logic: if he can get everyone to God-level power, maybe, just maybe, they'll all survive that apocalyptic future he knows is coming. So Rowan clears his throat and asks for everyone's attention because he needs a favor from the whole class. First, he calls on Istor, Marissa, Leon, and all the magic nerds who wouldn't touch a sword even if their lives depended on it. Then he addresses Flora, Sebastian, Lucas, and the sword guys, who have literally never set foot in a magic class. All the students are secretly excited that the new golden boy of the academy remembered each of their names. I mean, these are literally background characters. And yet he knows who they are. Sophie, as nosy as ever, chimes in asking why he's bringing this up out of nowhere. Rowan explains that he wants everyone to take both courses, magic and swordsmanship. He's worried he's asking too much. But here's where it gets funny. The female students are already convinced. Our boy has that protagonist charisma at max, so they would do whatever he asked at this point, no exaggeration. But the male students, on the other hand, look at this proposal with suspicion. It's like, bro, we already chose our courses for a reason. Why would we add more work? Rowan understands, but instead of arguing, he decides actions speak louder than words. He turns to his roommate, Lucas, literally the last person you'd expect to see in a magic class, and asks him to try basic magic studies for just one day. And somehow, with his pure sincerity and protagonist energy, Rowan actually pulls it off. No one can say no to this man's face. Professor Arthur, the Dean of Magical Studies, enters the lecture hall and almost goes into shock because there isn't a single empty seat. He had heard the rumors about Rowan convincing everyone to attend, and honestly, the man is excited to see the classroom completely full for the first time. All thanks to our boy. Rowan just wants to show everyone that magic isn't something mysterious or impossible. Hearing him talk about magic with such genuine enthusiasm, Professor Arthur gets curious and asks Rowan what he plans to demonstrate. Our boy asks permission to use the teaching platform for a moment. The professor laughs and kindly invites him to the front because, why not? Lucas is with Sophie, torn between embarrassment and pride at his roommate's bravery. While Rowan prepares, something different happens outside the classroom. A union leader arrives at a first-year class. Daphne immediately notices they are looking for Rowan. Lazarus admits, yes, the kid influences things, but monitoring the school is his duty. Besides the officers, Sienna Runner came on her day off. Sub-Captain Oscar also gave him a task. But the interesting part comes now. Mr. Diego Sanchez left his precious swordsmanship training grounds to attend a magic class. Apparently, he heard that his best first-year swordsman enrolled in magic today and wanted to see what all the fuss was about. Next to him is the director himself, who basically just accompanied him to keep Director Lazarus company. Professor Daphne watches this group from the Academy and the Union and tells them that under no circumstances can they interrupt the class. They are here only to observe in silence. The moment she carefully cracks open the classroom door, she is immediately hit in the face by intense heat. There is a crimson flame floating in the air, consuming all the oxygen in the room. But in complete contrast to this destructive fire, the boy who created it looks incredibly calm. Rowan is standing there, looking like the very embodiment of joy and wonder. Professor Arthur has raised a barrier to protect the students, while our boy calmly shows off a perfect fireball. Regardless of his talent, the fireball spell is not something someone Rowan's age should attempt, as it is outside the first-year curriculum. Even the fire arrow, a level below the fireball, is mastered in 5th year by the most gifted. How did this kid decipher a spell he shouldn't be touching for 5 years? The students are so hypnotized that no one notices the important group that just entered. The director is looking at the fireball, thinking he has never seen a spell radiate such pure and refined energy. It's almost like seeing sacred magic. Diego is a swordsman, but he notices the density of the spell is abnormally high. Director Lazarus thinks this is unprecedented. Technically, a novice shouldn't be able to achieve this, but the fireball is a simple spell. Seeing Rowan hold it in the air is still crazy. The strange thing is that the fire maintains a constant size and temperature without even flickering. By pure logic, this is not a normal fireball. It's something completely different. Sienna had already witnessed Rowan's incredible natural mana sensitivity before, but she still wonders how the hell a kid who grew up in a corrupt shelter can be capable of such beautiful and advanced magic. She is completely hypnotized by the dancing flames in the middle of this crowded lecture hall. Then she snaps out of her trance and reminds everyone of Rowan's collapse yesterday. She's worried that maybe he hasn't fully recovered yet, so perhaps he shouldn't be pushing himself so hard with such a difficult demonstration. Maybe someone should intervene and tell him to take it easy, but none of the adults want to interrupt. They are all too captivated by what they are seeing, but honestly, no one needs to worry because my boy is in total control. He is channeling a steady flow of mana into this, using his own customized technique. For him, maintaining that smooth and steady mana flow is much more important than making the biggest explosion possible. He doesn't want this flame to turn into a nuclear disaster if the mana gets out of control, but it's Rowan, so that won't happen. While holding that ball of death, he is more interested in the strong barrier Arthur raised to protect them. Rowan notices similarities between that barrier and the infinite void of the ritual. They look somewhat similar, but they do completely different things. His mind starts to wander, thinking, hey, what would happen if I just threw this fireball straight at the barrier? The intrusive thoughts feel different, but instead of testing that theory and potentially turning everyone into crispy nuggets, he compliments Professor Arthur and casually asks him what his defensive spell is called. The old professor goes completely blank because he is in total shock. I mean, maintaining a spell for so long requires incredible concentration, and this kid is here having a full conversation while maintaining perfect control of his magic, the absolute audacity of this child. Before something even crazier happens, Arthur decides to end all this. He manipulates his barrier to completely envelop and smother the flames. Instead of being disappointed, his fun is over. Rowan is amazed by such flawlessness. With the dean's final gesture, the fire vanishes and everyone gasps after holding their breath. Looking at the young man, Professor Arthur hesitates between scolding him or rewarding him for breaking every magical safety rule. At that moment, Director Lazarus steps onto the stage applauding our boy. He answers Rowan that the barrier was his technique, the blue flame barrier. Rowan tells his professor that it's a cool name. Arthur clarifies, I didn't name it, indicating that someone else named his spell. Since they're talking about names, the dean asks if Rowan's fire demonstration also has a name. Confused, Rowan says, no, bro, I just showed them a basic fireball, nothing special. But anyone with a brain and decent magic knowledge would know that spell wasn't just a basic fireball. And Rowan, more than anyone, should know that. He looks away and admits he was playing dumb. He actually hasn't named his technique yet. Director Lazarus intervenes, saying that as head of the office, he can't simply ignore what happened here. He asks Rowan why he did something so ridiculously dangerous. Without hesitation, Rowan answers directly. He was sure he could control the fire and trusted that Professor Arthur would back him up no matter what. He had no other intention than to show his classmates what is possible. He wanted to give them confidence in their own magic. Maybe some were curious but too afraid to try. The dean points out that casting a fireball before graduating is already incredible. So, what do you call a first-year student who did that? This was Rowan's way of proving that nothing is impossible. He can only talk like that because he has no idea how incredibly genius and extraordinary he really is. Even so, Professor Arthur feels a bit uncomfortable as an educator. He fears he is holding young people back with his outdated methods. This kid has shown him that his approach doesn't always work. Then Rowan turns to the dean and asks for more time on the podium. There's still something else he wants to show everyone. This time our boy calls his roommate Lucas, catching Lucas completely off guard. Lucas is screaming inside like, "Why am I the guinea pig?" But he walks to the stage anyway because what else is he going to do? When Lucas arrives, Rowan excitedly explains that he wants to help this swordsman cast his first spell. According to Rowan, magic and swordsmanship are just different forms of mana manipulation. Lucas trains his body and mana every day, so he should be able to dabble in magic too, right? Here's the thing. This guy, who has failed first year 3 times, has never opened a magic book in his life. How is he supposed to cast a spell? Rowan suggests starting with an incantation. Since Lucas has no magic training, an incantation should be easier than trying to draw a magic circle or decipher formulas. So Rowan starts slowly reciting this fire incantation in the ancient language. Lucas tries to imitate him, but can't pronounce those weird words. Rowan does everything he can to stay patient and teach Lucas with the utmost enthusiasm, but they can't even finish a sentence. Our boy really thought that someone who has failed first year 3 times would at least know some ancient language by now. But no, he still doesn't give up. Rowan translates the incantation to explain what they're trying to do and starts reciting something like a poem with a peculiar rhythm. Lucas is mortified just thinking about having to recite magic like a reject from a Renaissance fair. Rowan continues with the translated version while watching his classmates. The more he talks, the more confused and lost everyone looks. Suddenly our boy is overcome by a wave of helplessness. He thought he just had to get on stage and share his knowledge, but no one understands what he's trying to do. If they're stuck on the first step, what will happen to that horrible fate waiting for them in 10 years? If they can't become stronger, Rowan doesn't know what to do. He started with what he thought was the easiest possible incantation, something even Lucas should understand. Not only are others lost, even Sophie is confused, as if Rowan were speaking Klingon. Our prodigy freezes. To prevent a panic attack, Arthur intervenes, praising Rowan for his first attempt as a teacher. Then he asks for the formula of this modified spell, which calms Rowan. He uses telekinesis to grab a piece of chalk and starts writing the full formula on the board. Everyone is equally amazed and entertained by how fluid that was, as if the guy doesn't even need hands. It doesn't take him long to write the complete blueprint. Arthur summons his barrier again, but this time it's protecting the people on the stage instead of the audience. Director Lazarus and the dean study what's written on the board with absolute concentration. When asked where he learned that formula, Rowan casually says he never copied it. He saw what Professor Arthur wrote and simply adjusted it. Anyone with a trained eye can immediately tell this is not a simple adjustment. The kid changed some things to create a spell that worked better for him personally. He doesn't realize how incredible what he claims is, but he's basically saying he invented a completely new spell formula from scratch. The director and the dean exchange a glance. They need to have a serious conversation about what to do next and will call a meeting elsewhere. Before leaving, Director Lazarus thanks the kid for showing such an innovative formula. Meanwhile, the dean turns to the dark elf and asks her name. She introduces herself as Sienna from the Pillar of Faith, greeting everyone formally. Then, unexpectedly, the dean assigns her the rest of today's class. She can teach them anything, tell them to study, practice swordsmanship, or whatever. It's all fine as long as no one dies. Professor Diego also has the audacity to leave his next class to poor Sienna, who was literally just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Before leaving, there's one last thing. Professor Arthur removes the magical barrier that separated them from the students. The adults withdraw to discuss serious matters, leaving Sienna alone with a classroom full of chaotic first-year students. The auditorium is filled with whispers about what just happened. Sienna silences them all by slamming her hand on the table. That single movement scares most of the students, leaving them in complete silence. Sienna, leader of the Pillar of Faith, announces that she has been temporarily assigned to cover the remaining classes. She's going to treat this as a real class, and they better do the same. Everyone must participate as if she were a real teacher. Sienna may sound very professional and confident, but inside she's losing her mind. She's completely out of her element here. She wasn't made to teach, bro. And I mean, can you blame her? She's supposed to be a soldier in the field and a visual delight for us. Wait, that's not right. Anyway, the entire faculty, including everyone who witnessed Rowan's magic show, has just been called to an emergency meeting. Some of these professors are losing their composure because, apparently, this kind of emergency committee meeting hasn't happened in years. In fact, some of them have never experienced this before. They're sitting there sweating like, what the hell is going on? Director Lazarus enters, as professional and calm as ever, ready to present the main topic on the educational policy of the Union Academy. First on the list, our boy Rowan, the literal reason everyone is here in the first place. Professor Arthur stands up and presents all the facts about this kid and his situation with the fireball. The old man's mind is blown because, apparently this first-year student, literally a novice, simply looked at a complex spell and said, no, I'm going to do my own thing, and created something completely unique. Sure, the power was weak, but the guy basically edited the magic formula like he was mixing a song. The ability to rebuild spells so freely, that's something that had never been done before. Obviously, some of the other professors are looking at this with suspicion, being skeptical and all. But what are they going to say when the Dean of Magical Studies has already verified everything? Director Lazarus even promises to put office resources into analyzing this further, so basically they have to accept that this kid might have discovered a completely new way to approach magic. Great. So Rowan seems to be a once-in-a-generation genius, right? But as an academy, they need to figure out how to actually teach this prodigy without ruining him. Some professors want to stick with traditional methods, but others say, bro, this genius needs specialized education that matches his level. The problem is that personalized education goes against all their principles as a public institution. They can't afford to make a mistake and lose someone with so much talent. A professor suggests he join the union first, and the room is divided. Everyone debates the idea. Still, they agree that rural education is the best option, but they must be cautious. So they ask if there are any other concerns about the kid. Arthur stays silent for a moment, and it's clear he's thinking seriously. Finally, he drops the bomb. Rowan might have personality issues. The other professors are confused because they say the kid is kind and polite. Arthur doesn't deny that, but he worries that Rowan doesn't consider others' feelings. You see, the union values skill and performance above everything else. With Rowan's incredible talent, he'll stand out immediately, but as he is now, the kid might have trouble being accepted. He could fail the final stage of the entrance exam, which is simply an interview with someone who really cares about character. Some professors immediately jump to Rowan's defense, saying his actions came from good intentions. He's clueless and unintentionally makes others uncomfortable. To progress together, the level must be balanced, but this prodigy far surpasses the other novices. He's a child capable of creating magic instantly. Since the council is just going in circles, Director Lazarus suggests they bring the kid in for an interview. Everyone agrees it's a good idea, so no one objects. A few moments later, Rowan is escorted to the teacher's office and sits at this huge meeting table, looking nervous like never before. Professor Daphne tries to make him comfortable and asks how he feels. She assumes he feels bad about what happened with Lucas earlier, and she hits the nail on the head. Rowan admits he's frustrated for not understanding his friend's abilities well. Arthur intervenes, trying to console him, saying how difficult teaching magic is. Today showed him that reality firsthand. Rowan has been sitting there, thinking a lot and creating theories about his classmates. Maybe Lucas didn't try magic because he's not interested. Maybe he trained with the sword too early and only focused on that. Maybe Rowan pressured his friend to do something different. He feels regret and shame about all this. But then he drops another bomb. He worries that Lucas and his new friends are sick. This prodigy thinks his healthy classmates have some disease just because they have normal talent. I mean, bro, what? Arthur quickly reassures Rowan that there is no disease at all. Hearing the old professor's words helps our eccentric genius finally relax a bit. Seeing Rowan smile, Director Lazarus asks why he was so eager to teach everyone magic from the beginning. Rowan explains it doesn't even have to be magic specifically. He just wants to become stronger together with his new friends so that they can all become official union members in the future. Hearing this completely innocent and sincere response, all the professor's worries simply vanish. Their concerns about Rowan's personality are gone. Professor Daphne looks at him with absolute pride. With that, Rowan is dismissed. The meeting went well, and he can finally breathe easy. A few hours later, these professors literally drafted a completely new educational policy for first-year students. They're going to adapt to each student's pace. Academic skills will align with the best students, while social development will adjust to the average. The Union Academy is about to take a completely new direction. Imagine being so talented that you accidentally reform your entire school's education system. The entire faculty spent the night working out the details. The next day, they immediately implement this curriculum reform. Without warning, without delay, they just change everything overnight. At the training ground, there's an announcement. Professor Diego Sanchez announces that swordsmanship and magic are now mandatory for all students. Lucas doesn't even hear the announcement because he's yawning so loud he could wake the dead. Rowan is surprised at how fast they made this change. Also, active union members will now join each class as assistant instructors. Students can ask them questions and learn from their real field experience. In addition to that, Rowan, Sophie, and Lucas will train exclusively among themselves, rotating practice fights. Lucas is excited. He's been wanting to test his roommate's skills. Sophie wants to see how her sword skills compare to the best. Lucas challenges Rowan to practice first. Sophie waits her turn, and when it comes, her wooden sword soon flies out of her hand. She thought she'd at least put up a good fight, but that dream died fast. Rowan is a true monster who reads her sword movements as if he has the script in advance. But Sophie doesn't give up. She spots a brief opening but fails to take advantage. After her defeat, she greets Rowan with respect and asks if he can point out any flaws in her technique. Rowan calmly explains that her mana flow is a bit off. If she adjusts the flow direction, it should improve immediately. Lucas summarizes that she needs to stop swinging the sword wildly and focus on precision. Also, her legs are shaking, maybe from weak muscles. Rowan agrees that Lucas is harsh but right. His explanation doesn't cover everything. Now Sophie splits her mana halfway between her torso and legs. If she diverts more mana downward to stabilize, her stance will improve a lot. So while Rowan gives really valuable advice, Lucas just criticizes her. Watching their three top students interact in their unique way makes Professor Diego smile. He thinks there's no way Professor Arthur was right about Rowan having personality issues. Seeing how innocent and kind this kid is, he realizes the adults worried for nothing. So a few days pass, and our boy goes back to the professor for another heart-to-heart in the faculty office. This woman has basically been his fairy godmother so far, making sure he has everything he needs to survive school life. Our boy has been doing great. He no longer carries that emotional weight for his friends. Now he understands their strengths, weaknesses, and everything else. Daphne sits there, proud as ever that this genius has finally learned basic human empathy. Rowan has been doing pretty well at school. His friends cheer him on, share snacks, and enjoy that healthy academy life. But then there's this other situation that has our boy completely confused. The girls keep inviting him out, as if they're dropping hints everywhere, asking him to go shopping or see flowers after class. And this absolute nerd can't comprehend what any of that has to do with his studies. Professor Daphne is here trying not to laugh because, hormones exist and people start feeling things at this age. But Rowan, his default response to every invitation is basically, no, let's study together instead. My boy has no idea. Virgin energy at maximum. So Daphne decides to dig a little deeper and asks if there's any girl he's especially close to. The first person that comes to mind, Sophie, he says, yes, she's different from other girls. And before you get excited, he explains that she's an excellent swordswoman and the only other first year who uses flames. Very romantic, right? But Rowan has been getting closer to Sophie after learning her story, which is quite sad. Turns out she's the illegitimate daughter of a very important noble family, and her father enrolled her in the union only for political influence, so she's been under enormous pressure since birth. Our boy sees her as a very dear friend from whom he can learn, which is sweet but also shows he has zero game. Then there's Lucas, his third musketeer. Rowan has great respect for this guy's physical strength and admits there's a lot he can learn from him. But then, and this kills me, Rowan drops his personal theory about Lucas. He thinks the guy trains so much that his brain is literally full of muscle, which is why he hates studying. Rowan has a diagram where Lucas's brain is pure muscle with no gray matter. It's diabolical but accurate. As a good friend, Rowan tutors this hardhead so he doesn't fail the year. That's what good people do, apparently. Professor Daphne sits there, a little disturbed by this analysis, but she has accepted that geniuses just think differently. After his therapy session with Daphne, Rowan goes to Arthur's office to talk about his constitution problem. And look, it's hard to feel sorry for this kid. He has unmatched magical talent, but his physical stats are mediocre. But Rowan insists because he wants to handle much more powerful magic and has his reasons. Arthur breaks down the options. Magical tools that amplify mana or items that store powerful spells. Both sound great in theory, but it's not like they're available on Amazon Prime. If they were easy to get, everyone would be a mage. The magical tools you can buy are trashy one-use items or so poorly made they're useless for the kind of magic Rowan is trying to unlock. The other option, elixirs. These can restore mana, cure ailments, boost your stats, and come in all sorts of forms, though they are very rare. And even if Rowan somehow got one, there's no guarantee it would actually help him. But well, he's still young, so it's too early to lose hope. Then Arthur does something incredible. He takes off his necklace and hands it to Rowan. Inside the locket is one of these rare elixirs, a white pill he received from the governor as a reward for some past achievement. He basically says, maybe fate wanted me to give this to my most talented student. Naturally, Rowan hesitates to accept it, but the director assures him it's fine since he can't use it himself anyway. So Rowan takes the pill and swallows it dry, no water or anything. Immediately, he feels it dissolving inside him and floating in this sea of energy as the elixir spreads through his body. He's about to achieve some kind of breakthrough. He feels like he's about to unlock Super Saiyan or something. But suddenly, reality hits him like a truck and he's back in the dean's office, sitting in his chair as if nothing happened. From Rowan's extremely disappointed expression, Arthur can tell the pill was a complete failure. Rowan confirms it. The thing did absolutely nothing. Arthur didn't expect it to be a miracle cure, but the total lack of improvement is still pretty depressing. But our boy Rowan, he already knew this would probably happen. Instead of wasting more time trying to fix his constitution, he has decided on a new plan. He's going to reinvent magic completely. He's going to dismantle magic formulas, master mana manipulation, and create his own personalized branch of magic perfectly tailored to him. Honestly, if you can't change your body, just rewrite reality. That's brilliant mind energy. At least now he can focus on a single solution instead of chasing multiple dead ends. Let's fast forward 6 months. Today is a big day, the final exam for the first-year magical studies course. Rowan stands in front of the evaluators, Arthur and director Lazarus, and simply produces 2 small fireballs in his hands as if nothing. No words, no incantation, nothing. The 2 old men are clearly impressed and captivated by this masterful demonstration. Then Rowan increases the intensity and makes those small flames become furious, making them grow much larger. They've seen it before, but watching Rowan manipulate mana directly never ceases to amaze. It's incredible talent. At this rate, he could start combining different branches of magic. But even though everyone praises him, Rowan is here worried that his magic is too weak to be useful in the Union. Arthur has to reassure him. Rowan, casting spells without incantation already puts you on par with a 4th-class mage. You are officially a high-level mage. No one can argue that. He tells Rowan to stop worrying about destructive power and focus on his strengths to keep advancing along this unique path he has forged for himself. Then the dean challenges him to analyze and recreate spells up to 4th class, based solely on his own understanding. And to make it easier, he'll have free access to ancient texts in the library. Regarding his constitution issues, although they decide to keep that information secret since only the 3 of them are in the room, the dean and director decide to form a mage pact to keep it confidential. They join hands and begin to sing together this strange hymn in perfect sync. Meanwhile, Rowan is just standing there watching these 2 old men do their weird elderly ritual in the middle of his exam, completely lost about what's happening. Another full year passes, and now Rowan and the group have entered their 3rd year at the Union Academy. Today, Professor Diego calls an urgent faculty meeting, and although technically it's his decision, he considered it important enough to share with everyone. He drops the bomb. From now on, the school will no longer teach Rowan any movement technique, martial art, or swordsmanship that involves mana use. Immediately, everyone is concerned and curious about the reason for this sudden announcement. Diego explains what everyone already knows. Rowan fully intends to join the Union, and now that he's in 3rd year, it's better to avoid high-risk combat courses. Basically, Diego is saying Rowan must focus completely on magic. That's what he needs and wants to do. Arthur understands. Rowan is the kind of talent you want to keep selfishly for yourself, but letting him go for his future is the best Diego can do, even if it's not easy. Sienna, who started teaching there a year and a half ago, asks about Rowan's current physical level. Diego's honest answer, the kid just needs to draw his sword to pass the first Union entrance test. He's that good, a rare natural talent. His overall destructive power is still a bit limited, but that can improve with time. Since they're talking about power levels, Daphne turns to the director and asks how strong Rowan has become as a mage. After a brief, thoughtful silence, Arthur drops the bomb. There's nothing more I can teach that boy. Everyone is shocked to hear that Rowan has already reached the level where he can cast 1st and 2nd class magic like nothing, but most impressive is that he's now deciphering 3rd class spells for fun. He treats complex magic formulas like puzzles for toddlers, and he's barely a third-year student. To make things worse for others, now that puberty hit him like a truck, the girls are absolutely crazy for this golden boy. This guy could steal anyone's girl without lifting a finger, so the author had to nerf him by making him only interested in books. Otherwise, this would have turned into a harem anime in the blink of an eye. After another boring class ends, Professor Arthur calls Rowan aside to tell him about a magic scholarship tournament that is going to be held. Naturally, their local genius is the perfect representative. Rowan says, "Wait, what tournament?" Even though he's been here for 3 years. Turns out this event used to be held for mages to share ideas, but it stopped when magic became irrelevant. But now it's back. And listen to this. It's all because of Rowan. The dean drops this bomb like it's nothing, and our boy is genuinely surprised. Here's what happened. Rowan's reputation finally reached Shwaran, the autonomous kingdom and home of the Magic Tower, basically the Harvard of sorcery. The master of the tower is a duke, and they are completely isolated from everyone. Professor Arthur actually trained there until he became a high-level third-class mage. Since he knows how those mages think, he explains that they are driven by pure curiosity. Those magic fanatics heard rumors about a fourth-class mage at the Union Academy, and even though everyone is throwing that title around, Rowan remains humble about it. This whole event is basically an academic conference to verify if he's legit. Shwaran wants to debate with their prodigy boy and see if he really lives up to the hype. Now, Rowan could simply refuse this, but once he hears the grand prize, refusing becomes impossible. The Union is offering a valuable elixir. Even after that huge disappointment last year when that white pill did nothing, the chance to get an elixir is still tremendously tempting. There is one concern. Shwaran might know about his constitution problem, but the dean assures him there's no way. This is about interpreting magic formulas, and the elixir will go to whoever demonstrates the greatest mastery. Basically, Rowan could win an elixir just by debating magical theory. The dean promises he'll get it as long as he wins. With a reward like that, how could our boy say no? A few days later, the big day arrives. Shwaran shows up with a whole battalion of hooded mages looking mysterious and intimidating. The Union side only has Rowan and his professors. Now that's an imbalance. Arthur welcomes the visitors politely when one of the mages, Bert, lowers his hood and calls the professor his superior. Sorry, but imagine being a powerful mage named Bert. Meanwhile, Rowan is sizing up the competition. Shwaran's group is older than him, and they all have a serious amount of mana. Supposedly, they are students hoping to learn from a success story, although the Union made it clear only Rowan would participate. Still, Shwaran sent 3 older students. These petty mages never change. Still trying to show off when Arthur introduces Rowan as his sole representative, Bert feigns surprise like, "Oh, only one student? Please." While the adults greet each other, the competitors observe each other. Rowan notices the stare of a Schwartz student and gives him a friendly smile. He gets nervous at Rowan's beauty. After a sportsmanlike greeting, the conference begins that afternoon in the hall. Hours later, the audience fills the place. The freshmen worry that Rowan will face 3 alone and get hurt. Then the girls shout their support so loud they almost deafen Lucas. He says, "Calm down," and clarifies it's a debate, not a fight to the death, but they retort that debates are just as dangerous. Rowan hurt by words? What absurd logic. Lucas is surprised the younger students know him, but honestly he always accompanies Rowan. Beside him sits Sophie. Both came to see their friend dominate using only words. Professor Daphne approaches to announce the official start. She declares the beginning of the academic exchange, and those lower-grade girls raise a cloth banner with Rowan's name. It's comically inappropriate for an academic debate, as if they were at a sports game instead of an academic conference. Finally, our star Rowan enters, along with the 3 Schwartz boys. Professor Daphne explains the procedure. Each representative takes turns presenting a topic, writing spell formulas, and then moving to the Q&A session. The first debater is Ali Marco from Schwartz, who faces Rowan in the first round. Since Rowan had priority to choose the first topic, he chose carefully. He chose a topic very close and dear to him, a topic he has probably been obsessed with for countless hours. He chose telekinesis for the first round. The topic our boy suggested surprised these guys because, in these academic duels, the first move is usually to show off your most powerful spells, show your faction's greatest achievements to set the tone. But his suggestion is the basic first-level spell. Some Schwartz mages think it's a joke. Did we come all this way just for a baby's first spell? They look confused, doubting if the rumors about this kid were exaggerated. Arthur and director Lazarus wait silently as if they know something these fools don't. Then Ali Marco steps forward to attack, saying Rowan is not on his level nor worthy of this forum. Rowan retorts, "Oh really? Are you mocking Schwartz?" He explains that even telekinesis has deep complexities worth discussing. But Ali doesn't accept it, saying delving into such a simple spell would be a waste of everyone's time. Rowan drops the philosophical bomb, but aren't mages supposed to devote time to exploring truth, no matter how small? And honestly, with that, he left him speechless. Ali Marco, now out of patience and excuses, finally agrees to debate telekinesis. Being the educated genius he is, Rowan asks Ali what topic he had prepared since he doesn't want to be rude to the format. And here is where Ali severely underestimates our boy. With an air of superiority, he proposes debating the fireball spell, condescendingly explaining that it might be difficult for someone Rowan's age, but he doesn't mind having an easy opponent. Arthur understands the situation. Schwartz knows Rowan's abilities and is trying to set a trap, but Rowan surprises everyone by saying, "Let's do telekinesis and fireball together as a combo." Why talk about spells when you can combine them and leave everyone in awe? Then our boy calmly lifts a piece of chalk with his mind, no chance, no hand gestures, nothing, and starts writing his formula on the board. Ali Marco is in shock. This kid just cast a spell without incantation like it was nothing. Not wanting to be completely left behind, Ali also uses telekinesis to write his arguments, but he has to chant continuously the whole time just to maintain the spell. The skill gap is embarrassing. The Schwartz mages stare at the board, noticing that this madman is trying to merge two existing spells right now. "Are you sure?" Right. When it's time to explain their work, Ali goes first. He writes the telekinesis and fireball formulas, standard versions from great mages with no room for change. Now Rowan steps up to the podium, takes a moment, and explains that telekinesis is so basic that anyone with mana can do it. His argument is that people use it wrong by relying only on raw magical power. But thanks to Ali's interesting suggestion earlier, he was inspired to try something more exciting, combining two established spells. He points to his board where he shows the rewritten formulas. The first part deals with controlling an existing fireball using telekinesis. Cool, but not revolutionary. But the second version, that needs a demonstration. The chalk he has been manipulating begins to spin faster and faster until it generates a spark of fire. In just a few minutes, this kid had formulated a method to transform an object controlled by telekinesis into a literal fireball. He built the very essence of magic just for fun. The Schwartz mages are having a collective crisis. This single demonstration is challenging everything they've been taught about magic. For anyone unfamiliar with Rowan's abilities, the total shock must be disorienting. Luckily, the Union Academy faculty has gotten used to their resident genius breaking reality on a random Tuesday. While still spinning the flaming chalk, Rowan continues giving a lesson on advanced concepts related to these so-called basic spells. No Schwartz veteran can keep up. Ali Marco suffers an existential crisis after foolishly challenging a deity. After finishing his lesson and humiliating the rest, Rowan asks Ali if he wishes to add or correct anything. And what's worse, Rowan is being completely sincere. He really wants to learn more, but Ali cannot replicate the feat. He doesn't understand anything at all and is about to be humiliated by the incarnation of magic disguised as a child. The pressure intensifies, time runs out, and Ali can't take it anymore. Suddenly he coughs, blood begins to gush from his nose, and he simply passes out. My friend literally got crazied by words. Even Rowan didn't expect that. They rush Ali to the infirmary, and so Rowan continues his undefeated streak, winning the coveted elixir with facts and logic. Bert the mage delivers the prize, thanking Rowan for the show despite his defeat. He recommends Rowan wait before drinking the elixir, since consuming it so young can cause side effects. He should wait until near graduation, which is still 2 years away. Now that we've finished watching mages get soul destroyed, let's catch up with some side characters. This is Rita, a third-year student at the Union Academy, and she has been secretly in love with Rowan for 3 whole years. She knows there isn't a single student who doesn't like him. The boy receives countless confessions, and more than half of the new students enrolled at the academy just to follow him. Rita knows she probably doesn't even appear on his radar. For years, she has settled for watching him and loving him from a distance. But today she decided to be brave. Last day of third year, this is the moment. She gathers her courage, overcomes her fear, and confesses. Unfortunately, her sincere confession receives a very polite, very apologetic response, and then Rowan drops something really heavy. Love is embracing someone who has already left this world close to your heart. Nothing more. Rita never imagined he had such a dark view of love. Then when she asks what he feels, he explains that lovers show signs similar to mental illness with joy, ecstasy, fear, jealousy, and anger. He bets she doesn't feel that level of passion for him. And before anyone gets angry, he's not invalidating her feelings. Maybe she feels something. Maybe it was his appearance or status that made her nervous or excited. But is that really love or just admiration? All he asks is that Rita look into her own heart. If she still believes it's love, he is willing to continue the conversation because Rowan is always open to constructive conversations. The man has perfected the art of intensely disappointing people. Rita felt as if she had been hit on the head with clarity. So this is Rita. Today she was rejected by the boy she has been in love with for 3 years. And although it was painful and enlightening, she regrets nothing. Confessing your feelings to someone you like is a brave and meaningful act. Rita's unrequited love ended on the last day of her 3rd year. And honestly, she has never felt better. So the scene begins with Daphne telling the class, "Hey, we have Director Lazarus from the administration here to share some wisdom with you," and everyone starts clapping like good students. The bald man steps onto the stage, gives his speech, and then says, "All right, that's it for today. But if you have questions, throw them at me." Immediately, a guy's hand shoots into the air to ask the real question. Everyone wants to know, hey, every year thousands of people take the entrance exam. So why does the union always complain about being understaffed? The professor says, look, not just anyone can enter the union. This place is the most elite. Did you get in? Fame, money, respect. The whole damn package is yours. Another student raises his hand with the important follow-up question. Okay, but what about salary and benefits? And the professor drops the bomb. The pay is so good that you literally only have to focus on your missions. This is the most privileged job in the entire kingdom. The students are losing their minds. Then he throws another one at them. Every union member is directly connected to His Majesty, regardless of rank, because everyone follows the king's will. Everyone sits there thinking, damn. Then a guy raises his hand with a really smart question. He says, look, they only recruit talent, but joining will make us strong. I was the best in my class, focused only on magic, and I'm still weak. The professor is impressed that someone is thinking about the future and tells him, here you can become strong, motivating him to work harder in his studies. Rowan, among many books, remembers that Sienna compared his ability to that of the ancient elves. Reviewing old texts, he discovers that elven power consisted of communicating with spirits instead of using mana. They didn't control the wind themselves, but summoned a spirit to do it. They mastered elemental spirits, but he doesn't understand how they lost their powers suddenly. He discovers that in the era of the World Tree, there were elves and dark elves, representing the whole good versus evil thing. After the World Tree fell, the powers ended. The world kept merging into different timelines until humans dominated and elves almost went extinct. Rowan is depressed with no clues about his powers in this story. Now he knows that the flow he sees is mana, not spirits. So our boy went to see Arthur with his questions, and the old man is confused. He says, dark magic, what are you talking about? Rowan tells him he reviewed many books, but there was hardly anything written about it. The old man explains that ever since the Grave Group started messing with dark magic, they became public enemy #1 for the Union. Rowan looks worried and says he only saw Rita's magic technique. It looks like some ancient language, but he's not sure if it does the same thing. The old man points out that the real difference is in the mana itself. Rowan says, damn, yeah, that makes sense. Arthur explains that although Rowan still can't see his own mana, those bastards using dark mana, they are using dark mana. That's when Rowan gets it. The mana he saw before was dark mana. He asks, what exactly is dark mana? And the old man drops a pretty heavy explanation. If normal mana composes everything in the world, dark mana corrupts it and makes the world evil. He explains that the demon world is literally made of dark mana. Demons use it like battery energy, and these Grave Group bastards are basically using the same demonic energy. He tells Rowan that sometimes he has noticed cloudy mana around him. The master says that dark emotions turn your mana dark. Rowan asks, what is the goal of these dark groups? He answers seriously. They want to destroy the world, typical villain stuff. Months later, they ask Rowan if he's going to class. He says it's fine, and they respond, we know you're the best. A guy there looks confused while Rowan watches two people argue like children. The girl tells him to come over when he's ready. As Rowan waves them off, he thinks these two idiots actually make a good couple. As he enters his room, he thinks about how time passed too fast, as if someone had pressed the fast-forward button on his life. Inside a box, there is a red potion, the elixir he was told to drink just before graduation. Meanwhile, Lucas and Sophie are talking to each other about how their relatives are going to be at the ceremony. Lucas is sure his dad will definitely embarrass him with some cringeworthy speech at the ceremony. Meanwhile, Sophie is stressed about looking perfect, so she doesn't embarrass her family in front of everyone. On the other hand, our boy feels a little sad because he doesn't have a family to embarrass him. But then he quickly shakes off those depressing thoughts because these two idiots are his family. Now the family he has to protect, no matter what, even if they are sometimes complete fools. That's something Pauline's mother taught him before she died, the family you find. That feels different. Walking through his room, he decides to drink the potion, and as he does, something inside him changes immediately. Now he can see Mana much more clearly than before. The guy just unlocked the HD vision upgrade, then he notices the egg. Years have passed, and it's still the same enigma sitting there challenging him. He takes the stone and channels pure mana into it, and thanks to the potion, he can see many more details in the mana flow than ever before. At this point, he believes he can actually break the seal himself. He's finally going to find out what this mysterious egg is all about after years of being left hanging. He repairs a magic circle and concentrates on the egg. His eyes widen, the egg begins to float dramatically in the air, releasing an insane amount of magic. He is completely stunned, staring at whatever is hatching, probably thinking, please don't be a chicken, please don't be a chicken. And what do you think? It wasn't a chicken that came out of the egg, nor a majestic phoenix. No, it's this black bird with yellow hair. Our boy squints at that thing like, bro, that's an owl, and immediately this bird takes personal offense. It puffs up all angry like, how dare you? He sits there thinking maybe it's some rare mystical species or something. But then this emo bird just curls up next to him, and he says, well, you're actually adorable, you can stay. Oh, and fun fact, the instant this owl hatched, it absorbed all the mana in the area. So what does our genius protagonist call this creature that could destroy the world? Owl, that's it, just owl. Shakespeare rolls in his grave. Meanwhile, with Oscar, this man can't believe his absolute disaster of a son is actually graduating. He's really surprised, but then his thoughts drift to our boy Rowan, and he gets sentimental thinking about how his idiot son only made it to the academy thanks to Rowan. Now that graduation has arrived, Rowan is going to need a tutor, and Oscar is really worried about what happens next. But then he notices something weird is happening. All the professors are gathered discussing, and there's a woman saying she has been like family to Rowan for the past 5 years, and they have a very strong bond. Meanwhile, another professor intervenes, bragging that Rowan is going to revolutionize magic, and that together they will do groundbreaking research after graduation. Oscar is just standing there watching this unfold, thinking, wait, are these adults actually fighting over custody of this kid? When did Rowan become the most popular person at school? Cut to the graduation ceremony starting. They call Rowan to the stage, and he walks up with a super confident smile. Immediately, the students start whispering, wait, did he become the top of his class just because he's handsome? Which noble family is backing him? You see, they had heard rumors that an illegitimate child of a great noble house was graduating today, and everyone assumes it's our boy. Then Rowan takes the microphone and completely shatters their assumptions. He begins to tell his story, how he used to beg on the streets, how he was literally about to be sacrificed by a dark cult before the Union had to intervene and rescue him from becoming a ritual snack. After that, he joined the school, learned magic, made real friends, and decided that his life mission would be to protect people. He's giving a whole moving speech, thanking everyone who helped him become the righteous hero he is today, and his classmates are literally crying. His professors nod like proud parents, thinking, yes, that's my boy. Later, they are walking through the town, and his friend asks if he's going to take the Union entrance exam after the ceremony. Rowan replies, yes, that's been the plan from the start. Lucas mentions that his dad is looking for him, but then Rowan notices Sophie looks very sad. He asks if she's okay, and she admits she's nervous because she completely messed up her speech in front of the crowd earlier and is half panicking. Rowan, being the nice protagonist he is, puts a hand on her shoulder and says, don't worry, we'll all enter the Union together and show them what you're worth. She blushes and nods, now feeling super motivated. They arrive at the Union, and the place is absolutely packed. Rowan approaches the counter and introduces himself as a graduate of the Union School. Immediately, people start glancing at him sideways. Wait, isn't the minimum age for this exam 15? How old is this kid? The registrar checks his information and says, wow, you're the top graduate of the Union School, and confirms his registration, handing him a ticket for the exam area. The line murmurs, maybe he's different. They say he uses magic without incantation. Rowan reunites with Lucas and Sophie. They explain that in the first round, you just demonstrate your skills in front of a supervisor. Rowan smiles confidently. Do the usual and see you on the other side. Excited, the announcer calls, next, top graduate of the Union, Rowan. Our boy enters test area 1, and suddenly a massive golem materializes in front of him and charges directly at him as if it had a personal vendetta. The test begins, and Rowan raises his hand with total calm. Blue mana begins to swirl around him, and everyone watching is left speechless because apparently this level of mana control isn't normal for a kid his age. This is what our boy did. He analyzed the entire mana structure of the golem in just a few seconds. Once he has that information secured, manipulating and changing it becomes child's play. So what does he do? He initiates the golem's self-destruct sequence. He simply commands it to delete itself. The next second, this golem starts melting like a chocolate cake left in the sun. It just melts and dissolves until only its core is left floating in the air. Then the core falls to the ground, and with that, the test is over. And for a moment, no one can believe what just happened. Even though he just saw what our boy did, the examiner still couldn't believe it. He had assumed Rowan was like any other basic student who could throw some ice shards and fireballs, maybe a lightning bolt if he felt fancy. But no, Rowan just pulled a god-level spell out of nowhere that made the entire crowd go completely wild. Everyone whispers like, "Hey, did you see that? What kind of broken magic was that?" Lucas comes running and nearly knocks him over with a bear hug, totally excited, congratulating him for passing. Then he points to the other examinees and says, "Bro, look at them, they're in shock. You went full tryhard mode in the first round. What are the rest of us supposed to do? Uninstall and go home." Lucas is laughing his head off, then puffs out his chest and announces, "Too bad for everyone who goes after you, because the great Lucas Bondparcel hasn't even had his turn yet." The atmosphere was fun and lively, but then Rowan notices that Sophie looks extremely worried, so he calls her attention, trying to cheer her up. "Hey, Sophie, I'm looking forward to your performance. We're all joining the union together." She gives him a small smile and thanks him, but it's clear she's still super nervous. The examiner calls her name next, and Sophie literally trembles as she approaches. You can see the fear radiating from her. Lucas tries to cheer her up. "Relax, you got this." She turns around, smiles at him, and heads to the stage. When she gets up, the golem appears and she draws her sword. A know-it-all in the crowd immediately starts commenting. "Ah, she's using the Poolabelle sword technique." Then he squints and says, "But her stance is terrible." The girl next to him asks how he knows that, and the guy responds, "I've trained with the Poolabelle family before, so I know their style." He explains that it's a very difficult technique, almost impossible to counter, but the key is depth. Her sword needs weight and precision. Looking at her stance, it lacks depth. The girl, worried, asks what to do, and he replies indifferently. She should have learned the basics before showing off in public. But Sophie didn't care about rules or theory. She gripped her sword and lunged straight at the golem. 1 second she was there, and the next she had disappeared like my motivation. The know-it-all and his friend are left with their mouths open. But Rowan, the guy, is just standing there with a satisfied smile like, "Yeah, that's my girl." As the golem crumbles into dust, Sophie stands there in shock that she did it so fast. The examiner, still processing, stammers that she passed and can go get her certification seal. The crowd is completely wild. Did she really just cut a golem like it was made of paper? What the hell was that speed? Meanwhile, Lucas and Rowan are grinning from ear to ear, knowing perfectly well that she didn't even show half her arsenal, though both notice she landed 6 consecutive strikes on the golem. When she returns, both congratulate her. Lucas teases her. "You looked rusty." Nervous. He cracks his knuckles and says, "My turn. Learn, kids." He steps up arrogantly. He smirks cockily and says, "This is just a warm-up." As soon as the golem materializes, Lucas launches himself like a missile and splits the creature in two with a single blow, instantly destroying its core. He stands there admiring his work like, "Wow, did I overdo it? Sorry." Meanwhile, the examiner is having a complete mental crisis because this is the third person today who has defeated the golem in one hit. He's like, "Bro, what is this? A damn speedrun competition." Later that night, they're relaxing at Lucas's house. Lucas tells Rowan to make himself at home and shout if he needs anything. Rowan thanks him for letting him stay, and Lucas brushes it off like it's nothing. Then he mentions that dinner is ready and that he should freshen up first. At dinner, there are carrots, only carrots. Lucas's dad offers more to Rowan, but he politely declines. Lucas immediately starts complaining about the food and gets a tap on the head for being ungrateful. Rowan just sits there thinking, wow, this family dynamic is the healthiest. Then Oscar turns to Rowan and asks about the gifts. Our boy immediately starts thanking him, saying they were exactly what he needed. The conversation shifts to the exam results, and after hearing how they did, Oscar is genuinely surprised. He knew Rowan was special, but he didn't expect to see that level of magic in an admission exam. But now that he knows what the kid is capable of, the man is super excited for the second round. A week later, it's exam day. Two examiners watch, complaining that many passed and they have to extend the test. Among them, our boy and his group immediately stand out. Meanwhile, Rowan is glad he doesn't have to fight Lucas or Sophie, but he wonders, wait, who am I actually fighting? His eyes go wide when he sees someone familiar. That know-it-all guy from before, the one who was commenting on Sophie's sword moves. The guy approaches Rowan and asks, have we met before? Rowan says, yes, man. You were analyzing sword techniques during the first test. Honestly, I was really impressed. I'd love to learn a few things from you. The guy doesn't remember him at all. He draws his sword and says, well, since I'm now a graduate, let me teach you a few lessons, kid. They face each other, and the examiner gives the signal to start the fight. The fight begins, and our protagonist farms aura. He uses telekinesis to take the guy's sword, and the guy doesn't even notice. Rowan waits calmly while the other loses his mind, confused and stammering. Wait a moment, but Rowan doesn't wait. He casts the spell again, and the guy's sword starts floating above him as if possessed. The examiner asks, do you want to continue? The guy can't believe a kid is manipulating him like this. His ego is destroyed, so he confidently announces, I don't need a weapon to handle an arrogant brat. Rowan raises one finger, and the guy immediately realizes he's doomed when he sees his own sword flying straight at him. With no time to react, he is defeated by his own weapon before a stoic Rowan. As the guy lies broken on the ground, the examiner, astonished, wonders how it's possible. He names Rowan the winner and tells him to prepare for the next duel. Rowan, still a bit surprised at how easy it was, smiles politely and says, good fight. A few days later, Rowan is reading his letter. It's the day of the final test. As he prepares, he thinks about how all his effort has brought him here. He's so close to entering the Union, his dream is right there. But remembering his previous fights, he realizes his attack patterns have become too predictable. They really haven't changed much. He knows this time he has to change things up. He's always been counterattacking, letting opponents strike first, relying on turning the situation around. Looking back, he realizes he needs to learn new techniques and stop depending solely on instinct. After joining the Union, he has to improve. He can't keep doing the same thing forever, but right now he needs to focus on the interview since it's the last obstacle. Then suddenly he realizes, wait, where's my owl? Just as he's thinking about that, the owl appears flying toward him out of nowhere. He gets really excited, relieved that what he was looking for finally showed up. They both seem genuinely happy to see each other, and Rowan asks the owl if it's celebrating with him. Ever since it hatched, this bird has been disappearing, just randomly vanishing and reappearing when Rowan is alone. Is it some kind of technique? He holds the bird in his hand, thinking about how every time it disappears, he can't perceive its mana at all, nor its presence. It's like the owl dives into another dimension and then comes back. He still doesn't know if this is even a real owl or some mysterious creature he hasn't met yet. He tells the bird, when I join the Union, I'll figure out how to truly talk to you. The owl seems happy and flaps its wings. Right at that moment, Rowan feels someone approaching. He turns around, and it's Sophie calling him. Rowan turns to talk to her quickly, but while he's conversing, the bird simply disappears again. Rowan is shocked. Sophie approaches and tells him it's time for the interview, so they should go. The scene shifts to the Union building, where people are waiting for their turn. Rowan notices there aren't many people left and mentions it. Sophie says only 50 made it to the interview and thanks him that there are so many familiar faces because of him. He brushes it off, saying it's because she's stuck with him. Then someone appears who leaves everyone speechless. It's Lucas, and he's acting weird because he's super nervous. He tries to calm himself. No, I'm pretty normal right now, even though his face says I'm going crazy. Sophie gives him a handkerchief for his sweat before the interview. Rowan jokes, you never get nervous unless it's about talking to adults. Is it because of Vice Director Oscar? Then a student comes out looking defeated, shoulders slumped, and Rowan says, didn't he just go in? How is he already out? Lucas says some people give up early halfway through, and Rowan teases him because he would know best having studied much longer. Lucas retorts, yeah, thanks, that helps a lot. Rowan asks, doesn't the interview evaluate character? Lucas, joking, pins him down. Are you saying I have no character? They freeze when the examiner calls. Next, Rowan, get ready. When Rowan stands in front of the door, he notices it responds to people's mana. He thinks he'd like to investigate it sometime, but not now. When he enters the room, there's no one around. He wonders if maybe the interviewers haven't arrived yet, but then a voice behind him calls and tells him to come closer. He follows the voice and reaches another door. When it opens, he is absolutely stunned by what he sees inside. He feels an overwhelming amount of mana coming from the room. There's a woman who looks like an elf with covered eyes, welcoming him with a mysterious energy. Now this whole situation is too confusing for our boy. For years, he imagined the Union leader would be a seasoned warrior, and instead he finds this relaxed elfa serving tea like she's at a book club. The vibe doesn't match what he expected at all. They're casually having tea, but our boy is on high alert because the amount of magic and mana this woman radiates is insane. It's like this is the maximum level of power he's dreamed of his entire life. Then she speaks casually and says, "It seems the tea is to your liking." He snaps out of his internal crisis and replies, "Yes, it's warm and refreshing. It tastes like it was harvested this morning." Then she just drops it bluntly. "It's because of your unique body constitution, the one that can't store mana," and before he can process that bombshell, she throws another at him. "You must have been alone all this time. It must have been hard to reach this level." Rowan falls silent, completely speechless, because honestly he never thought of it that way. His heart has always been full thanks to his loved ones. He never felt lonely, but she continues. "Despite your loneliness, you grew up and became such a strong person. And wow, this feels different. People have praised his abilities before and acknowledged his efforts, sure, but no one has truly understood his past struggles like this. This is the first time someone really sees him, really sees the loneliness he went through." Those kind words touch him so deeply that tears simply start flowing. He wipes them away, all confused like, "Hey, why am I crying now? Is it because of the mana she's emitting or what?" The governor tells him that although his body is weak, his heart is pure and honest. He's a kind and generous boy. Then she points, saying, "You're with your strange little friend." For a moment, he thinks, what is she talking about? Then he understands. Ah, she can see Owl. Owl flew toward her, getting cuddles and compliments from the elf mom. Now everything starts to click. She not only knows his past, she also knows his present. This woman knows everything. He starts thinking about that vision he saw before and wonders if she knows about that too. He finally gathers the courage to ask. "That vision I saw before, was it the future?" He is really worried about what he saw. She pauses for a moment and then shares some wisdom with him. There is no such thing as a fixed future. If he saw something of the future, there's a possibility it won't happen. Everything depends on him and his will. He becomes what he believes, the future he creates. What he saw was just a possibility, not a guaranteed outcome. He just has to work hard to prevent that possibility from becoming reality. That's what humans have always done. And so our boy finally understands the path he must take and how to work to build his future. He smiles with genuine happiness as if he just discovered the secret of life. Cut to the next day at Oscar's house. And this man had prepared a feast but with carrots. Naturally, because he loves carrots. He says he put extra effort into them so they should celebrate properly. While they're eating, Sophie asks where they'll be assigned. Oscar replies that it's hard to say. The governor probably made arrangements during the interviews. He mentions that only 10 people passed, including the 3 of them, and they are the only 3 who graduated from the union school. Rowan thinks there's a chance the 3 of them might end up together, but Oscar says, nah, that's pretty unlikely. But then he adds, though no one knows what goes on in that crazy person's mind, so it's also possible. Then he changes the subject and tells everyone that their relationship is about to change once they're outside. Inside the house, he's their fun, caring uncle. Outside, he's the vice director and a union member, so they'll have to keep everything strictly PR professional. Lucas says as long as he gets paid, he doesn't care where he works. Sophie asks if he really hates the idea of working under his father's orders that much. Lucas replies that it doesn't even matter because anyway, they've always been distant as father and son from the start. Rowan smiles, thinking that Lucas has matured a lot. Now the man keeps his personal and professional lives separate like a real adult. The scene shifts to the entrance of the union administration, where a guard checks them and confirms their names. Rowan remembers he had visited the administration building before, but he was never treated with this kind of respect. Now he feels that his status has truly changed. As they move forward, he wonders what they'll do here. When they enter, they are surprised by what they see. It's a forge chamber filled with intense heat and glowing metals everywhere. It's called the Union's Book and Sword. They are looking for custom weapons and meet Ulrich, a dwarf as grumpy as any. He doesn't waste time with pleasantries and immediately tells them to choose any weapon they want. Lucas immediately picks a longsword. That man knows what he wants. Sophie is still thinking about her options while Rowan just looks around, looking lost. The dwarf blacksmith notices but focuses on Lucas first. He tells Lucas to grab it with confidence and swing it. Lucas makes a test swing and Ulrich analyzes it, saying if they add more weight and sharpen the tip, it will be much more destructive. They can also adjust the length so he can train comfortably. Then he calls Sophie. She cuts the air with several rapid strikes, and he watches her carefully like a coach. He tells her that for her sword style, she lacks raw strength, but her balance and stability are excellent, top-notch. It's clear she has trained her lower body very well. Ulrich mentions that now that she's in the Union, there's no need to limit herself to just her sword style. She could also use a shield alongside her sword. She says she'll think about it, but it doesn't really matter because the man had already made a decision. He is crafting both a sword and a shield for her. Finally, he calls Rowan, and seeing that this idiot still hasn't figured anything out, asks Rowan if he's a mage. For a moment, Ulrich gets a little annoyed and thinks, bro, a mage and a blacksmith aren't even a good combination, but whatever. He acts professionally and tells Rowan he'll do his best to create something decent for him. Rowan interrupts him, saying, I have a strange request. He explains that he doesn't like common swords. He prefers to control floating fragments. For a moment, Ulrich is like, what? To prove he's not talking nonsense, Rowan summons this bright blue fragment that simply floats beside him. Then he drops the question. Can the blacksmith fix his broken fragments? The blacksmith simply extends his hand like, let's see what we're dealing with here. The moment he inspects the fragment, this man's expression completely changes. He recognizes it immediately. This isn't just any broken sword. This is a fragment of a demon sword imbued with dark mana. He looks at Rowan like, you're an interesting kid, and then drops some wisdom on him. If they managed to properly forge this single broken sword, they could turn it into 12 separate blades. Rowan's face lights up with excitement, probably already imagining himself looking incredible with 12 floating swords. But the blacksmith immediately reins in his enthusiasm, warning him that the reforging process is much harder than it seems. He explains that each piece must contain exactly the same amount of mana. One mistake would destroy the artifact. It's master-level work requiring at least a 4th-class mage. Rowan looks at him and asks, we just need a 4th-class mage? He says he can do it. The blacksmith sweats, doubting whether the young man is arrogant or capable. Rowan smiles and promises to take responsibility if anything fails, managing to convince him. The man nods but adds nervously, don't make too much noise, fearing what's coming. Now our boy is focused. He starts doing his thing and a beautiful blue mana aura simply bursts around the floating fragment. His fingers dance with precision, weaving magic over the ancient metal. Faced with the difficulty, he closes his eyes, concentrating to the max. Focused, Rowan remembers Pauline's lessons. He's combining her wisdom with all the super advanced and crazy stuff director Lazarus showed him. In his mind, he sees the energy inside this fragment like thousands of bright branches, and he carefully begins to separate these magical threads. But then you see him frown a little because this is actually extremely difficult, even for someone as cracked as him. He's putting everything into the real challenge here, dividing the sword's mana into 12 perfectly equal parts and keeping it all stable. With one last effort, Rowan simply says, screw it, and goes all in, creating a huge whirlwind of energy that explodes outward. The master blacksmith's jaw literally hits the floor. This man is in shock, staring at this scene as if his whole world had been erased, thinking, but what the hell, what is this kid doing now? Cracks of light spread across the fragment as the power divides the metal. The tornado of energy calms down, and there stands Rowan, looking imposing with 12 identical fragments floating around him. The newly forged blades float and land in the blacksmith's hands. The man laughs in disbelief, examining his perfect fragments. Same shape, same size, same mana levels, literally everything is flawless. He's completely losing his mind because a 15-year-old kid just casually did what most master mages couldn't do, even if you gave them a whole lifetime to try. Cut later, it's orientation day, and Baldy is explaining the usual stuff about the 7 divisions of the Union and how everyone is assigned based on what they're good at. Then he drops the hard truth. The world is brutal. Carrying the Union's name puts a target on your back, and even the common people you protect will call you the kingdom's dog when you're not around. But he tells them to keep going because at the end of the day, they're here to maintain peace and make the world less miserable. Moving on to induction day, the blacksmith hands Rowan a very heavy bag with both swords inside. Rowan is immediately excited to test these beauties. He tells Lucas it's time to leave, but his friend looks like someone kicked his puppy because he was put in his own father's division. They arrive at a huge, elegant hall where the members of the Creed division are already giving it their all in training, with swords clashing everywhere. A voice announces that the new recruits have just arrived. Rowan immediately notices a guy's badge showing he has a very high rank. That's Edgerin, the division leader and an expert-level swordsman. After a quick introduction, Edgerin casually drops that he's bored out of his mind and wants to see what Rowan is made of. And our boy and Lucas are like, what? This isn't normal in these things. But no, Edgerin doesn't care at all. He points to the side and tells Rowan that Oscar will be his opponent. And Oscar is totally willing because he's curious to see how much Rowan's telekinetic sword handling has improved in these 5 years. And Rowan is also excited to find out how strong he has become in these 5 years. So he accepts the duel. Rowan's attitude immediately earns him Oscar's respect, but also reminds him that he has to give it his all because he won't hold back either. And as he says that, he draws an absolutely enormous claymore. Rowan simply replies calmly that magic is his thing, and suddenly 12 new mana-infused swords appear out of nowhere and start floating around him in a circle. Oscar notices the extra swords and says, "Wait, didn't you have fewer of these before?" Rowan explains they were a welcome gift, and Oscar immediately recognizes the craftsmanship, asking what our boy named them. Rowan tells him they're called Sevilla, and Oscar thinks to himself if these small swords will really live up to such an elegant name. Rowan admits he's also curious about their power, since this is basically his first real test. Then Rowan surprises Oscar with a bold request. He wants the first move. Edgerin, watching from the sidelines, is impressed by the audacity. Oscar realizes this isn't just an arrogant rookie showing off. The kid really has a plan in mind, so they position themselves at opposite ends of the hallway. Rowan with his floating swords and Oscar with his huge sword. Then Oscar bursts with an intense crimson aura and basically warns Rowan, "Don't you dare disrespect my family's fighting style with a mediocre imitation." Rowan remembers his 5 years of training with Lucas, knowing the Pasov family's greatsword style perfectly thanks to all that practice. But he also knows that Oscar is on a completely different level than his friend could ever reach. With that, the battle begins. He goes all out from the first second, using all 12 fragments. But Oscar simply deflects them with total calm. He gives Rowan quick feedback, saying the technique is rough but it has potential. Though even if it does, it's nowhere near enough to beat him. And as he says that, he charges straight at our boy. And Rowan has no idea how to stop him, so he quickly devises a rudimentary plan. He knows he can't stop that sword, so instead he focuses on slowing the sword's speed. Oscar is about to land another blow when the next second he is completely immobilized. Lucas and Edgerin are watching from the side, and Lucas points out that something invisible just immobilized his father. Rowan gets up while Oscar struggles with his bindings. It turns out he manipulated the weight and friction with mana to trap him. Oscar looks at him admiringly, warning him that those parlor tricks won't be enough. The mana threads crack, and with a roar, Oscar breaks the bindings easily. His greatsword falls heavily, but Rowan blocks it with his 2 swords. Rowan pushes, noting the power of his weapon. But Oscar stops holding back and unleashes furious attacks, pushing Rowan across the floor with each blow. Our boy knows his mana is still too weak to hold Oscar for long, but at least for now the situation isn't too bad because he can control his weapon. But the real problem is that there's nowhere to retreat. He's losing ground, so he decides to go completely on the offensive. He conjures a fireball and hurls it at Oscar, and it all happens so fast that Oscar could barely block it. And in the end, it was his mustache that took the hit. The guy lost half his mustache in that attack, and his commander and comrades didn't miss the chance to mock him for it. Several started trolling him, but at the same time they admire his skill.